Conor Lane for a second. You could be seeing clearly Conor Nushin Mullen. Can we talk about Conor Lane for a second? Mullen. Can we talk about Conor Mullen? Can we talk about Conor Lane for a second? You could be seeing.
I mean, I just thought the game should have been stopped there.
App.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
Right, Monday morning, you're very welcome along to OTB AM. It's Sheahan and Eoin with you all the way through until 10 this morning. Get involved. You can text the show on 53106. No, you can't. You can WhatsApp us at 0879 180 180, or of course you can leave a comment on the YouTube stream for us. The footballers of Mayo, Meath and Offaly made it one of the most exhilarating Gaelic football weekends maybe this decade, since the year I don't know, as long as we can bloody remember. And the Premier League was back, and there was loads more other stuff happening as well. But we got to start with Mayo, Eoin, just before we get on to their joy and how exuberant the performance was, particularly the young legs winning the game for them in the final 40-45 minutes of play. What did the Kerry Mafia feel about things? How do they feel about things right now? What's your temperature?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think everybody's still in stunned shock that Mayo were the ones who got the bounty. They were the ones who managed to kill the bad guy, and they've managed to get that piece of joy. And I don't know, there's always this weird sort of taking down of Mayo whenever something really good happens to them. And I think there was kind of a similar, there was a certain tone when they won the National League in 2019 that people were like, oh, it's only just a league. And maybe you could kind of start to sense maybe a tone towards Saturday night being like, oh, it's only just a semi-final. But I would not go along with that whatsoever. I think Saturday night was this massive milestone in the journey of this Mayo team, a team who have beaten pretty much all the big teams in the country at this point over the last 5 or 6 years, and this was the final team that they needed to beat in championship football, and they did it in incredible fashion, absolutely incredible fashion. I still can't get my head around it, especially, well, first of all, I thought that Dublin were going to win by 10 points, and I got that prediction totally wrong on Friday.
At half-time, it looked like you were bang on.
I was thinking, wow, okay, this thing really has happened. And it was kind of even as if Dublin were holding back a little bit in the sting that they were delivering. So it just makes what happened over the following 55 minutes bonkers. And I'm not sure if I've seen anything or I've read anything so far that has properly explained what has happened.
I think there's a little bit in James Horan's press conference post-match where he talks about them not pressing collectively in the first half. That explains a little bit, and they got their systems better in the second half. And then you start feeding in the other 15 bits of information that we have about the 80 All-Ireland medals having walked out the door, Dublin standards slipping, a bit of complacency settling in, and then Dublin starting to play as individuals in a way that we haven't seen them. Not traditionally, when the goal chance comes, the pass gets made and another pass gets made and somebody fists it into the open net or walks it in and kicks it in. That wasn't happening. There was Hollywood shots. The type of stuff that we've read in the culture wasn't there, was right there. And, like, make no bones about it, this was as precipitous a collapse from Dublin as we've seen since the chaos years. Like, this is the collapse in the same game, the same stage of the competition against Mayo David Brady's Lakewood Gale was on last night, and TG Carr, brilliant timing, and he was talking about Kieran McDonald's point to win the game against Pillar's team after the mill at the Hill. Like, this is as dramatic as that. It's just stretched out over the extra time. I think probably because Conor Lane didn't let them kick the ball back out. Because if they kicked the ball back out, somebody from Mayo was winning that ball, and more than likely it was going over, and we would have had that dramatic finale as opposed to the extra time. So I don't know. We're going to talk about Dublin a bit more in a moment. What about Mayo?
You see, Mayo are in an incredible place at the moment. They completely defied all logic in terms of what we thought it would require to beat Dublin. And it's something we've been speaking about quite a bit on this show. First of all, we thought that you need everything to go right for you if you were going to beat Dublin. That had not happened for Mayo. Second of all, we thought that you would need goals to beat Dublin. That did not happen for Mayo. And third of all, and this is a point that I'll hold my hands up again and said I was beating the drum on for a long time, I thought you needed a big lead to beat Dublin. I thought you needed to lead from the front, be up by 6 points at half-time, and then hold on to dear life as the onslaught comes back the other way. Mayo did not do that. Mayo came from behind themselves to win this game. So they have defied all logic as to how we felt that the Dubs were eventually going to get beaten. So I think that there is a lot about Mayo on Saturday that almost vindicates everything about this team over the past 10 years.
Yeah.
There is so many reactions that are based on the result of a game, who the winners are and who the losers are. And I think Mayo got wrongly hammered in so many quarters for being the losers of those great games against Dublin. The only reason they got beaten in those great games down through the years against Dublin was because Dublin were a better team of footballers than Mayo, just a better team, full stop. Well, it was nothing to do with being lily-livered or not having balls or being cowards or anything like that.
An all-time great team with some of the best players that have ever played the game in their peak.
Exactly. But that courage and that sense of adventure was always there with Mayo. I never understood this analysis about that not being there for Mayo. That was always there for Mayo. And it was that exact same courage that was there on Saturday night, except this Mayo team is better than those Mayo teams of previous years, and this Dublin team is weaker than those Dublin teams of previous years. That all comes together and you end up in a fully deserving win for Mayo. I accept that I'm saying all this in hindsight because I wasn't sure if that was the case before Saturday. In fact, I was pretty sure that wasn't going to be the case on Saturday. So it is still a shock. I don't want to sit here this morning and point to things and say, oh, we should have known all along, because we did not know all along. You can never be sure until the full-time whistle is blown.
No, but, no Cillian O'Connor, no Oisin Mullen, Aidan O'Shea has one of his worst games in a long period of time and gets taken off. Like, if you'd said that at the end of 50 minutes into this game, this is going to be the scenario, Dublin will be quite far ahead, these three players will not be on the field of play, what's going to happen? You've been like, well, that does not end very well, does it? So I think it's that bit, because this isn't the same Mayo team. Like the poignant shots pre-match of all of the former Mayo players in the crowd, like still in their Mayo gear with their initials on it. You're like, they're so connected, they're so current, they're so part of that setup, but they're actually not. Obviously, they've had the same turnover that the Dubs have had. It's just that their kids are coming with this burst of athleticism and identity in that second half. I think that's, we can tease that out with Anthony Moyles a little bit later on, but I don't know. I think that whatever strength and conditioning templates and whatever athletic templates Mayo have had over the last decades, there's a type, and there's a type in their full back line, a type in their half back line, a type of midfielder and a type of forward coming through. Now they could do it shooting accuracy going up a couple of percentages, because like watching that first half you were like, oh my god, they're killing themselves with these wides, and not just Aidan O'Shea's mark, but like loads of other really horrific wides, not being able to hit frees from where inter-county players are supposed to be able to hit frees from. You're thinking this is just going to go so badly for them. And that second half performance, but more the performance in the first half of extra time, is like, well, that's the birth of a new team, right?
And it will have brought them on so much, having found that performance, because it did look like it was just nowhere to be found in that first half. And like, I mean, there is so much about that performance in the first half where you're like, were they just waiting for the second half? Did they feel that there would just be a burst and they needed to wait? But that doesn't really make sense.
No,
because you can't afford.
I'm not buying that.
Nobody wants to go down 6 points against Dublin.
And it could have been way more.
Yeah, it should be curtains against Dublin, and it wasn't. Like there's. Again, I'm kind of mystified about so many different elements of what actually happened on Saturday, and the only thing you can be sure about is what Mayo brought in passion and energy, and in terms of running in particular in that final quarter. And what you can be sure about is about how poor Dublin were after half time. Shockingly poor.
Yeah, and we'll get into why they were poor with Anthony Moyles a little bit later on. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning, start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Here's what's coming up on the show between now and 10 o'clock this morning. We're going to have the performance rankings in just a moment. Anthony Moyles is going to join us at 8:05 for some more in-depth analysis, and we'll put that point about Mayo's transformation to him. Sports pages at 8:30. Interesting weekend, lots of stuff going on. Mark Lawrence is going to join us today. 40, the Premier League is back with an absolute bang right from the get-go on Friday evening all the way through to Spurs beating Manchester City yesterday. It was an opening weekend to savour for most of neutrals. Nathan Murphy is going to join us at 9 o'clock to gloat. Ashton O'Reilly is going to talk to us about the Meath footballers. One of the biggest calls that anybody's made in this show in a long period of time.
One of the biggest correct calls
was that Mayo, as that Meath were going to reach an All-Ireland football final, overturning a 40-point defeat 6-7 years ago. They've come from that to beat Cork in an All-Ireland semi-final, and they're now through to an All-Ireland final. Bear in mind, Dublin didn't have any senior competition in the Leinster Championship last year, and now it's going to be an all-Leinster women's football final. It's a phenomenal turnaround, a remarkable recovery from them, and a real template. And they were 7 points down with 3 minutes left to go. So there was proper drama in Croke Park all weekend. Right, it is 7:41. It's time for the performance rankings.
You know, that wasn't an All-Ireland winning performance.
Probably should have won the game based on their second half performance.
Is it a step too far to say it was the performance so far of the World Cup? Maybe not.
OTB AM's performance rankings with Gillette.
I'm scratching my head. Our performances was just lacked that intensity.
Okay, every Monday morning we go through the good, the bad and the grand in our performance rankings, and we're going to focus on the Dublin versus Mayo game on Saturday night exclusively this morning because there are so many different threads about it. As you can imagine, Mayo are going to be reserved for the green and in the red. It is basically the preserve of Dublin this morning, and Dessie Farrell in red here because it has been a bad year for him. It is going to be a situation where questions are going to be asked of him and the entire management team over the next little while, even though there are so many other different facets that we have seen here that have let them down over the course of the last little while. The main thing from Saturday night, obviously, is the fact that Dublin completely conceded the momentum of this game, that they had this game in the palm of their hands and they retreated and retreated and retreated. And it is inexplicable that their ruthlessness died like that there was a contentment almost with the score, a lack of an ability to find that killer touch, which has been synonymous with Dublin for so long. It is so confusing as to where that went over the last little while, because if you can do it for 6 consecutive years, there was a sense that there was this infinite ability to go to the well time and time again, and that was just absent at the weekend. Like, if you want to distill this down to one player, you kind of almost feel a little bit sorry for Conor O'Callaghan. It's kind of like what has happened to this guy, where we're talking about this as him as one of the greatest forwards of all time. Does the system do him a disservice? Has he just had a bad year? These are some of the questions that I would certainly have after watching it at the weekend. And for me, it was a ponderous style of play that we used to refer to as controlled. It just looked totally off the mark on Saturday night.
I mean, the Dublin... The autopsy on what happened in Dublin this year is going to last long into the winter, and there's going to be a huge opportunity for us to see these players in a couple of weeks' time playing for their clubs, to see if they can get back to having the brio and swagger and impact that they've had, or if some of them are just a good bit behind where they were. Like, if you listen to the football pod with Paddy and Andy, they've been talking consistently about the intellectual property and the brain power that has been leaching out of the Dublin setup over the last number of years. When you think about the A versus B games in particular, that was driving standards, and Tommy always makes the point that the Kilkenny hurlers were exactly the same. The hardest game that Kilkenny ever faced, we always heard that, was in those A versus B games, and that's fair enough because the quality of player that they had and the strength and depth. For Dublin, that was even more pronounced in recent years, and then you've seen that disappear. So there was always going to be a huge battle, and maybe winning last year's All-Ireland title was the bit of miraculousness that Dessie Farrell was able to just pull out. But they still have all the advantages of the massive playing population and the easy access to training that most other inter-county teams don't have. So that bit hasn't disappeared for them, and they still have a bunch of players who are, again, some of the greatest players ever to play the game, like James McCarthy, Brian Fenton, Kieran Kilkenny. They're all still in prime, and I don't know, like maybe their strength and depth over the last couple of years hasn't that new tier of players haven't been bedded in and haven't been given opportunity, because the previous generation were still going to training, still showing up, still really important, and that flips next year, and you know there's another raft of players who go, and that next new generation have to come in and step up, and are they going to be as good as the players who left? I don't know. Be interesting to see. I didn't think there was much in the second half. There didn't look like there was an attacking philosophy underpinning what Dublin were trying to do when they had the ball. When Mayo pressed, and when Mayo started to hunt in packs and started to be physically aggressive, like we haven't seen any other teams do that to Dublin. And again, you know, shots fired across the rest of the Leinster teams who come up against them, like very passive. Kildare very passive against them. Are Kildare sitting watching this going, geez, maybe if we just tried a little bit to be a bit more aggressive? And what are Meath thinking about? Like,
well, at least Meath put up a real effort, it seemed, in that Leinster semi-final, whereas Kildare were, it seemed, happy enough to keep the score down, which is kind of terrible to say. But maybe those counties just need to see this and actually need to see what happened on Saturday night, because...
And isn't that the worst part about this? If you're a Dublin fan, supporter, player, selector, manager, it's like, oh, balls. Everybody knows now. There's tape on what you're supposed to do to us, you know, and we can be got at, and our players will respond if things start going against them.
Yeah, like I do think as well that, like, when it came to this first instance where Dublin were going to get beaten, again, this is speaking totally in hindsight, Mayo seemed actually like the perfect team mentality-wise to actually be the first ones over the line, to be the first ones to beat them. I'm not even sure, I've said it many times, I wasn't sure if Kerry actually had the mentality to do it. I think in 2019 in the drawn game they maybe had Dublin where they wanted them and couldn't get over the line, and I definitely think Tyrone didn't have the mentality to beat Dublin, whereas Mayo, this beautiful stubbornness that they have, it seemed like that was always going to be, in hindsight again, the template that was going to beat Dublin on that level. But there's a couple of really interesting things here, and you speak about the advantage that Dublin have. I think there's been again a lot of scoreboard reaction to Saturday night, as if all the advantages that Dublin have suddenly disappeared as a result of them losing a game, which is just not the case. It's going to be one of the really annoying narratives over the next little while. You know, the sarcastic split Mayo in two, or I mean, all Dublin's home games in Croke Park and being at the business end of the year and all that. Those advantages still exist.
Yeah.
Beating a team does not mean that the team that lost don't have the advantages. So that's going to be a frustrating thing. And the other thing that's been a big reaction to the scoreboard, in my opinion, is the discipline of the Dubs and the edge that Dublin bring to proceedings, as if Saturday night was a million miles away from their edge that they've shown in big games in Croke Park in the past, because it wasn't. Let's face it, it absolutely was not. This is the Dublin team that we have become familiar with over the last little while. They've always had that edge. Yes, they come across as really pleasant people in interviews, and they are genuinely good people off the pitch, but on the pitch they are the worst people you want to come up against. They have always crossed the line in every way imaginable and have on many occasions got away with it, and that is what a lot of champions have always done in a multitude of different sports. But let's not pretend that it didn't exist before Saturday night. Yes, they lost the rag, but if they'd won the game, we would have been saying they went over the edge and they went to any length necessary.
Look what they managed to do at the end of normal time. There was going to be a kick out where they were completely under the cosh, and they managed to get the referee to blow the game up about 2.5 or 3 minutes earlier than it should have been, despite the fact that Mayo are pouring forward. This is like a siege at that point, and all Mayo need to do is get the ball back once more, because Dublin have literally passed the ball out over the end line to give them a 45, like, in a way that we have never seen them before. They are out on their feet. They are absolutely wrecked. And rather than like allow the ball to come back into play, they're like, okay, let's just start a mass brawl here, essentially. And like the dark arts of dark arts from a team who got to the point where they were the best of all time by employing them the whole way along. Like that was not a breach of core values or anything. Remember the kick out that David Clark takes when there are 6 Dubs simultaneously wrestling their Mayo counterparts. What year is that? Is that
17?
17. All-Ireland final. Whatever happens, this ball's not getting back into play, right? We're going to cause mayhem and chaos. And that's what happens when a team lives on the edge. It looks really ugly when they lose, and the 3 black cards all come at once, and really there should have been minimum 2, potentially more, 3 red cards for various things during the game as well. But that's what that team did. Like, that was one of the characteristics of it. It meant that the opposition always had in their heads, I'm going to be physically sore after this game, and I'm going to be got at during the match. And most teams, before a ball was thrown in, were beaten because of that. Mayo were never, over the years, beaten by that, and actually seemed to relish those physical exchanges. So the notion that I agree with you 100%. That wasn't some disintegration of Dublin. That was who they are. It's just they didn't have the attacking flair at the weekend to carry the day. And I don't think, by the way, that's not a criticism. I'm speaking jealously about their ability to do that over the years, because the Kilkenny hurlers had exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
They would kill you if you needed to be killed, and you would be like, oh, at least I was killed by greatness. So many teams beaten before that. I think retrospectively now, I'm in my head going, that Tip team that put it up to Kilkenny all those years, what an amazing team that was. And that Mayo team, who were mostly in the stands yesterday, on Saturday, what an amazing team that Mayo team was. Because that Dublin team stands comparison with any sports team we've ever seen. And this young Mayo team knocked them off. It's amazing.
I really do think that Saturday does frank a lot of Mayo form over the last 10 years, to be quite honest with you, and it does definitely cement that Mayo team as one of the best we've seen in modern football, the one before this year obviously, because this year's team very much have another chapter to write. That actually brings us nicely on to the other thing in the red, which is the officiating. So I don't know, I think this would be an even bigger talking point had Dublin won the game. I think it would have been a massive storm. It's still a massive talking point, I think, because I think it was just a dreadful performance from the officials on Saturday night, and there are multiple different aspects that you can look at, but the one thing that kind of came to mind was what Eamon Fitzmaurice told us on the show years ago in 2018, that GAA needs 2 referees, and that might be one way of doing this. There has been talk of video referees over the past 24 hours, but it does seem that the game had completely got out of the hands of Conor Lane, something that he tried to arrest and try and bring back under control during extra time. But even different moments before then, you can kind of have levels of sympathy for him for decisions that he missed. Obviously, the red card that should have been given to John Small, play should have been stopped, and that was just bizarre, really. And
I hadn't realised it was Pascal who misses the goal chance at the end of that. Like, even if there's a point at the end of that, you know,
it should have been back. If that was Conor O'Callaghan, it's back at the net, and all of a sudden
if he passes, if Dublin are being Dublin. If Pascal's had more game time over the years, I don't know. Instead of actually trying to be the hero in that instance, it gets laid off again, and suddenly Dean Rock is side-footing it in from 2 yards out. I'm not sure, but that is one of those, like, an entire lives and seasons change on that one moment.
And absolutely, and we know from the reaction from Conor Lane's decision making afterwards that, like, there would have been no bringing that goal back. If that was back at the net, that was it. That was the decision. That was final, and that would have been, as I say, that would have sent people haywire over the past couple of days with regards to the refereeing. Kind of comes back to the thing we mentioned at the top. Mayo kind of needed everything to go. We thought that Mayo needed everything to go their way in order to win the game, and that would certainly include the refereeing, that they would maybe need a couple of decisions to go their way. In fact, they were screwed over, and they managed to still win the game, which again just does not make sense whatsoever.
Well, was there an evening up of things? Like, Evan Comerford comes out, and does he foul the ball? I'm not sure. There was a lot of ball fouling going on. Like, Tommy Conroy likes to carry the ball a lot. He's so fast that you're like, wow, look at that. Speedy Gonzalez. And then all of a sudden it's like, hang on, was that 10 steps? Did he bounce the ball? I'm not sure. But anyway, we never see steps called, except in the final moments of the game when desperately really need this to be a draw here so I can maybe get out of here alive. And it didn't feel like he fouled the ball, and I don't know. I'm not sure about the retaking. I mean, I understand the 16 players in the field, but like, it's 16 Mayo players in the field. Why did Henley take it? Did Henley know, taking the first one, that he was going to get a retake anyway? Because he seemed pretty clear about the retake happening. And if he did, it's genius from him, because it's like, I'm going to get my eye in here, and then, okay, I did that wrong, I need to reorient my stance.
I think Rob Hennelly is just this ridiculously composed person that he made it look like he knew exactly what was happening when that was being retaken. I've never seen the 16-man rule implemented in such a big game like that before. Tommy was making the point before we came on air that the officials were in his eye line, and maybe that's the officials themselves are like, okay, hold on a minute, we didn't get out of your way there enough. But I would say that if you're taking a free and the officials are in your eye line, you wait for the officials to move and then you take the kick. And I think Mayo got the rub of the green with that decision, to be honest. So maybe it did even itself up, but I think the main one was the red card. Dublin should have been down to 14 men after the small hit, and maybe Conor Lane after that is maybe he's a little bit shook after that as well, and maybe it is an effort to even things up.
Now, here's the thing: he's got loads of umpires. People keep saying that, you know, the umpire calling for, or whoever called for Hawkeye when it was, again, Mayo score, the dander is up, the crowd is in flame, the entire stadium is in fuego, and it's like, oh, we're going to go to Hawkeye for a point that was like effectively over the black spot that the whole country had seen. Like, that's. There were other ones that they didn't go to Hawkeye. You're thinking, was that definitely a point? I'm not sure. Wouldn't mind seeing that, but that one anyway. Do you want
to listen to James Horan?
Yeah, let's go for it. So here's James Horan talking about the Eoin McLaughlin hit.
With Conor Lane for a second. You could be seeing clearly miming on the TV saying that's a joke when the Eoin McLaughlin hit. We could have been having a very different conversation here at full time.
Yeah. Look, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't think. I just thought it was I Well, I suppose the thing that bothered me the most is, you know, when a player isn't bothered, the way they fall to the ground. You know, they can't really protect themselves because they're either unconscious or they're knocked out or whatever it is. And I just saw the way Eoin fell with that hit. So that's what bothered me. The play went on, and Dublin had a goal chance that I think it was Cormac Costello could have stuck in the net. So sometimes you know, if that ball could have gone in, what happens then? It could be a very different game, absolutely. But my main concern that time was because the game didn't stop. Was Eoin okay? That's what really annoyed me. I just thought the game should have been stopped there.
Paul Galvin made the point on Twitter that his reaction helped spark the Mayo comeback. There was certainly, like, it was a big focus, and the fact that it's on the big screen, I presume the whole team sees it, and the players start to get at it, and like there's a coming together. Definitely a key moment in the match, and a key moment, I think. Look, and we're hearing that I think everybody's heard at this point that he's undergoing surgery, so horrific for him. We really wish him the best. What's the suspension for something like that? I don't know, and does it, like, you know, how much does it matter? The thing is that, like, it's not going to stop somebody doing the same thing again. And the other thing that seems to now be acceptable as a yellow card offence is a straight clothesline, which is definitely a red card offence all the way up to the All-Ireland semi-final. But you hit an All-Ireland final, semi-final, it's like, yeah, you can clothesline somebody, take them out, they can be lying prone on the ground, maybe a little bit dazed and confused. Yellow card.
You're talking about Paddy Small?
Everything's a yellow card. Well, Paddy Small had one, but didn't Diarmuid O'Connor have one as well?
Oh yeah, he did actually. Oh, but the Paddy Small thing, I guess, was less clothesline and more kind of box to the head when you look at it in slow motion. And yeah, like, I mean, it is interesting. The higher the stakes, the more lenient the officiating sometimes, and the more lenient the CCCC can be with their bans, and we've seen that across both codes.
Yeah, and the absence of the black card for Davy Byrne was a black card. It's like he doesn't pull him to the ground. He does pull him to the ground. Your man falls. Like, that's what happens. Like, that precisely the whole type. It definitely feels like we need a definition. If you tackle around the head, that it's going to be a health and safety issue. It's going to be a player welfare issue, and so therefore we're going to try and stamp this out, and we're going to make it a red card. We're going to make it a red card offence in senior inter-county Gaelic football all the way down to under 10s and below. But that doesn't seem to be. No one seems to care about that. It's like physical game, shoulder to shoulder. It's like, it wasn't shoulder to shoulder, no. And it's really time that we started respecting the fact that, you know, you bang on about the amateur ethos. Oh, you're giving this guy a bad name. It's like, well, the other guy actually isn't going to be able to go to work, you know. So what do we want here? I think we just want to make sure that everybody goes on the field and feels safe coming off it. Anyway, OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. This is the Gillette Performance Rankings. If you want to get involved in this, we'd love to hear from you. Who should be in red? Who should be in amber? Who should be in green? And we've given away a Gillette starter pack By the end of the show, we'll announce the winner, and give us your views. The easiest way to do that is on the YouTube stream, or you can always tweet us at Off the Ball.
We're going to move on to Amber, and I'm actually putting Dublin's future in Amber here, mainly because we're kind of uncertain about what happens next. There is definitely, a Sunday game last night had a lot of montages celebrating the Dublin era.
Apparently they were dead.
There's a lot of...
it was their funeral.
Fall of the Empire on kind of that sort of tone regarding a lot of the coverage this morning, like Eamon Sweeney comparing it to Napoleon's retreat from Russia and that sort of thing, which makes sense in the immediate context of this season, obviously, but in the wider context of Dublin being dead, I'm not fully convinced. Now, in fairness, I'm the person who said on Friday that Dublin aren't dead in the context of this season, and I expected a massive backlash from them on Saturday, which obviously went completely the opposite way. So I am cautious enough to predict that Dublin will be back next season, but I think there is a chance that we do see the backlash next season and that there will be a sting in the tail for a lot of these players. And with regards to some of their best players, I mean, a lot of them are still very much the right side of 30 and very much in the spine positions of this team. What you would have to factor in here is what will Dublin do to try and manufacture that sting? Will they try and create a Stephen Cluxton last dance next year? I think that would be an interesting off-season development if it does happen, because you got to remember here that we were speaking to James McCarthy on the show a few months ago, and I asked him that is the idea of him getting to the 9 club, surpassing those Kerry legends and being in an exclusive club of the only people who've won 9 All-Irelands in football. Does that motivate him? And he's like, I'd be lying if I told you it wasn't in my head or it hasn't been mentioned. So it's definitely something that's been spoken about in the camp. And Cluxton's obviously in the 8 club at the moment. McManaman's in the 8 club. Philly McMahon is as well, and Michael Fitzsimon's too. Do they all go to the well one last time? Do they do a sort of Meath in the late 80s and like they went to Sean Boylan's house to persuade him to come back? Do they do that, but they go to Mannion's house and go to McCaffrey's house, and do they try and get the band back together for one last go at this thing next year to try and get them over the line and try and get them back into Hogan stand? I think there's a chance it happens. Then again, maybe not. Maybe this is the end of the empire, and maybe what comes with that then is more opportunities for your Basquel type players and younger players than that as well. The team who lost the under-21 final a couple of years ago with some really talented players such as Kieran Archer, do they then come into a team with less pressure because there will be more retirements, there will be more opportunity, and there will be less of an expectation for them to win multiple consecutive All-Irelands? And maybe that is the slower generation that we're going to see. Either way, Dublin will be fine. The question is, will they be fine next year and be back to winning All-Irelands, or will it take them a couple of years?
Very interesting to see exactly what happens, and all of a sudden there is uncertainty of outcome because 3 teams will believe that they absolutely deserve to be there, and let's wait and see what Tyrone. I don't know if we're going to see the proper Tyrone this year given the impact that COVID seems to have had on the panel, but certainly they have enough young players coming through that they have forward power that will give them confidence that they could be All-Ireland contenders over the next while. Okay, so Dublin's future is in the amber, in green. James Horan and Gaelic football generally. Yeah,
Gaelic football, obviously, you mentioned there at the top. Croke Park witnessed 3 unbelievable games in the space of 24 hours, from Mayos comeback to Meath's comeback, and then scenes with Shane Lowry in the stands celebrating an Offaly All-Ireland in between. It was amazing. But even just in the context of Mayo versus Dublin, the first half was dreadful. People were talking about the introduction of a shot clock in the first half and trying to...
Can we just officially cool the jets on changing the rules anymore? The rules are fine. What you need is teams playing well. Mayo played well in the second half, and there was nothing wrong with... obviously the rule around the tackle and the rule around clotheslines need just a little bit of clarification. Maybe we could apply those rules and apply the black card rules. But shot clocks and marks, and no, the game is a really brilliant game. Let's all cool the jets on that and just ask teams to be aggressive and ask teams to try and score and try and play their best football and stop being passive. Mayo super active in the second half, and the game was on fire. So I'm like, we need to stop with this whole shot clock stuff.
And the game, I think, is better as a result of the result going the way it did on Saturday, which may seem harsh to say of a team who've won 6 in a row, but the way they played and the way they kind of sucked the life out of the game wasn't very enjoyable at all. And I think what will happen then is that that'll spark a rethink within Dublin, where they might go back edged themselves back towards 2013 style Dublin, where they were the ones instigating the craziness. It wasn't Mayo, it was Dublin instigating the craziness in that era. And maybe they'll edge back towards that and we'll see a better version of Dublin, a more exciting version of Dublin, which might end up them being more successful, being back to being successful again. And I think that's a good thing, but I think we needed the result on Saturday to go the way it did for us to be talking about football in a positive way. I think as well, when you look at the landscape now, and if people, again, I'm not sure what's going to happen next, but if people are thinking that the empire is finished for Dublin, then I think that maybe just spells a good immediate future for football, because the identity of the All-Ireland champions is shrouded in a bit more mystery at the start of every year than it would have been previously. Yes, there is a big gap between the elite counties and the rest, but it was one in the rest for the last half a decade. So this looks like a better future. If Mayo win the All-Ireland, then I mean, it does throw everything up into the air for next year, because they will celebrate for the next 70 years, and they should rightfully do so if they manage to win this year's All-Ireland, because they've been trying so bloody hard for it and they've gone through so much pain. But it doesn't matter. Dublin are out, and there will be a new All-Ireland champion. And I think going into next year and for the next couple of years, there will be more uncertainty than we've had in recent times.
Yeah, even if Dublin pull a Kilkenny and win the next two, then they will have gone through a bit of fire to do so. And I think there's a really good chance that maybe we don't have provincial championships that provide us with All-Ireland semi-finalists next year. Like, there's a really good chance, if we all seize the moment right now, that we might be able to have a meaningful summer of high-quality games where Dublin and Clonus playing Monaghan in a match that has an impact on the ultimate destination of Sam Maguire. How amazing would that be? Yeah. It's right there for us. Look at these games. We could have these games every week. Wouldn't it be great if it could be like this all the time? It could be like this all the time. We don't get to decide, but Congress gets to decide. Please, Congress, give us what we need. Yeah. Right, that's football. What about James Horan? What a performance so far. And Jesus, they need an All-Ireland to frank it. But I'm going to take away the leading scorer in championship history. I'm going to just take him away pre-season, and you're going to be like, look, next man up, that's how it is. And we're all going to look at you and go, look, I'm really sorry for your trouble, house private. And then the week of the game, one of the most transcendent young talents in football is gone, sorry. And the whole country knows about it in advance. It just the news is so bad that it leaks out. And then your captain his game disintegrates for you, and you're like, right, what's going to happen now? Tell me, Eoin, where does this rank?
Oh, right up there. Jim McGuinness gets lauded rightly for how he masterminded a plan to take down the Dubs in 2014. And I think James Horan deserves similar credit. There was a sense when he came back that he wasn't back just to try and keep Mayo on the straight and narrow. He was coming back to change the fortunes of Mayo, to finally get them over the line. And he came back as a changed man, it seemed. There is a different version to James Horan that we're seeing now. There is, again, easy to say in the aftermath of Saturday night, but it does seem that he came back with a bit more of a winning mentality, or the eyes had narrowed a little bit, and there was a bit more of an edge about this guy, a bit more of a winning mentality about this guy. And there's been enough hallmarks about his team over the last few years to suggest that this is actually going to be the case. Because, I don't know, that Mayo team of last year didn't seem like, even with Cillian O'Connor fully fit, didn't seem like it was guaranteed to make an All-Ireland final. And kind of the same thing this year. They were playing Division 2 football. So they've had to work really hard for this. I think maybe even 2017 and 2016, there was a team there that were maybe expected to go all the way at the start of the season, and they had that expectation. I don't know, there was a little bit of a free hit about the last couple of years for Mayo, and they've delivered on this, and they've managed to get to the business end every single year under James Horan and his return. And, I mean, the masterclass can be distilled into one moment on Saturday night, which is taking off Aidan O'Shea, which could have, again, if Mayo lose that game, what would we be saying about that decision now? I don't think we'd be criticising James Horan about that whatsoever, but we would be talking about it as a very sad moment. But in actual fact, it's an inspired moment. That's how we're reflecting on it now this morning, to take off such a totemic figure in your team, and I mean, to do what a lot of managers maybe wouldn't do in the past, which was take him out of the team, because James Horan has that confidence. He feels that the chemistry is good enough in the team to be able to take out an important player like O'Shea, who was having a terrible night. He always has a terrible night against Dublin, but what a weapon he is to have now for the All-Ireland final.
Yeah, and there's also a brilliant piece today that Conor McKeown is writing about the RT man of the match, Pádraig O'Hora. Lee Keegan, I think, was the Sky man of the match. O'Hora's post-match interview was an all-time classic, but his story is unbelievable. I knew nothing about his backstory. He's 28. He's obviously celebrating with his kids on the field of play, but he was on that TV show. I don't know if you know this, on the
Hell Week,
Special Forces Ultimate Hell Week, as number 23. Took a couple of years out from the game, went and did jiu-jitsu and karate and MMA, and came back and like this is going to be a motley crew of people who get us over the line, and I'm not going to write anybody off at any stage of their lives. You know, I'm still open, even though he's inexperienced and a young player. He's not young, obviously. He's a grown-ass man, as they say in the States. And what a performance he put in at the weekend as well. So 8:09. That is it for Monday's Performance Rankings.
OTB AM's Performance Rankings with Gillette.
Yeah, we've got a packed show still to come. Talking Gaelic football with Anthony Moyles in just a moment. Premier League with Mark Lawrenson and much more too. We're back after these with reactions from 7-time All-Ireland winner Paddy Andrews in Croke Park.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Football is back.
The Premier League on OTB.
Ball to Sterling! Raheem Sterling!
Exclusive Premier League live commentaries every Sunday. The very best expert analysis on your phone and for free. Download the OTB Sports app now.
Sean, what's that thing going round the garden?
That is our new Husqvarna Automower.
Automower?
Yeah, it's a robotic lawnmower from Husqvarna. Cuts the grass automatically, has GPS tracking and an app. Even works in the rain. I just thought, why spend time cutting grass when I could spend it with the family?
Great! You can put the dinner on, so...
No can do, love. Have to paint the man cave.
Husqvarna Automower. Never mow again. Learn more at husqvarna.ie.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
The benches. The bench were one thing. Mayo got 2 points off the bench through Jordan Flynn and Darren Cohn. Sean Bugler scored Dublin's point off the bench, the first score of extra time. But it wasn't just the scores that made the difference. Aidan O'Shea was taken off after 48 minutes, and Mayo's shape changed after that. What changed in that Mayo team? It was a very, very young Mayo team that finished that game.
Well, look, we've said all along, or everyone in the country's analysed Dublin to death over the last 7 years with the success they've had. You've got to take them out of their comfort zone. You've got to push up. You've got to be brave. You've got to be in their face. And that's what Mayo did. To be fair, Mayo were making errors themselves, but it was just their attitude and their energy. If you look at the last play, in normal time, Mayo have 6 on 6. They're forwards inside the Dublin 45. They're all out. They're pushing totally up all over the pitch on Dublin, and that's what you had to do to try and take Dublin out of the comfort zone. In the first half, Dublin controlled the game. There was no contact from Mayo. It was 10-4 and it was cruise control. The second half, we knew they would under James Horan. That is the only way he sets up his teams. I'm sure people are saying, would they play a bit more defensive? They went all out attack in the second half, and they got the rewards from it. That combination of Mayo's bravery, but also, look, Dublin will look back on the unforced errors. They're so uncharacteristic. Davy Byrne, John Small, Niall Scully, guys who have been absolutely phenomenal, outstanding for Dublin over the years. The mistakes just started to pile up. And what it was that momentum, not having the experience to regain control of the match as the tide was turning against them. And ultimately, Mayo's energy, you could see it. The black card in extra time as well was a big thing. That allowed Mayo to knock over 2 or 3 points in a row, and Dublin just didn't have the time to wrestle it back.
Tommy Conroy and Ryan O'Donoghue stood up today to kick 4 points apiece. Can you talk to me about their performances?
Yeah, look, in the first half, no Mayo forward had scored. It was exactly what we had expected, the areas they'd struggled with in that half. But to be fair, we talked about it on the pod during the week. If Mayo were going to get over the line, they needed massive performance from these younger players. And make no bones, that is a huge win for Mayo GAA. It's a huge win for those young players. They've had 7, 8, 9 years of heartache at the hands of this Dublin team. And for Tommy Conroy to kick 3 massive points, look, he was struggling. There was no two ways about it for the first 45, 50 minutes. But that's just the attitude of Mayo. They've never been wanting for that. They've never been a question about their commitment and their drive and their desire. And they kept on going. And finally they started getting the breaks. And the creek started showing in Dublin's defence. And Tommy Conroy kicks 3 brilliant points. Ryan O'Donoghue kicks a couple of points as well. And you know, that just shows serious balls from those guys. Like I say, young, inexperienced players. It was going against them. The Dublin defence was well marshalled. They didn't get a sniff in the first half. But just like Mayo have done over the past decade, they kept on going. And that energy, that attitude from them, look, They deserve it, and it's even it's hard for me, and it's hard for Dublin supporters because it's been such an amazing run from an incredible team. But to see Mayo supporters there today, they've been through the heartache, and those Mayo players, it's a massive win for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Paddy Andrews there in Croke Park talking with Tommy Rooney at full-time Mayo sensational win against Dublin. You'll be able to listen to Paddy Andrews and Andy Moran together on the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy exclusively tomorrow on the OTB Sports app. You'll have to wait another full day if you want to get anywhere else, but make sure you download the OTB Sports app today, turn on notifications, subscribe to the podcast, and tomorrow, as soon as it drops, you'll be the first in the country to be able to listen to that. Go download it and you'll get the GA hit of the summer by Tuesday midday, full 24 hours before it becomes available anywhere else. Anthony Moyles, good morning to you.
Morning, Jared. How you doing?
Well, we're all pretty excited, aren't we? It's like a new day, a new dawn.
Yeah, it seems a bit like that, all right. Yeah, it certainly does. You know, and I think we've been talking about it the last kind of, 4 or 5 weeks, I suppose. I think probably since the Meath game, that, you know, there was cracks there in the giant, and I think eventually those cracks told.
It did feel like the Meath and even the shabby enough performance against Kildare was just boredom at one level, but it wasn't. It was actually something more fundamental than that.
Yeah, look, I mean, I wrestled with this over the last couple of weeks as well, and you know, they just didn't do boredom any of the other years. You know, they did ruthlessness, they did putting you to the sword, they did basically, you know, a very diligent game plan. There was ultra confidence. So I don't truck with the whole thing of it was boredom, because that is an unbelievable. If you're standing there as a manager and you see that seeping into your team and your squad and your play, you're actually very alarmed, you know, because that's not something that you can just get rid of on the training pitch. That's now a kind of a something that's getting into players, you know, that they're clicking into that mode. So I think what it was uncharacteristic errors, fellas trying things that they normally wouldn't try, maybe a lack of confidence in what they were doing, maybe a lack of confidence in the game plan, and you know, all of those things looked fine, you know, because in the first half you're kind of saying, well, actually, you know what, this is all okay. They're doing what they normally do, but when the pressure really started to mount, and when the pressure really came on from Mayo. So when Mayo, a la Meath, and Kildare to a certain degree in the Leinster final, when they really squeezed up, when they really applied pressure, not only on the ball carrier, but also on the actual receiving men, the inside men, and the six forwards, well, that's when the cracks really started to appear.
Well, let me just read this here before Eoin comes in on this. So this is James Horan. He was asked, you know, what did you say at half time? And this is interesting. So not much. Just got back to our structure a little bit. They were getting their kickouts away very easily. We were a bit out of sync on that. We just went through a few things there and talked about lifting our energy a bit and doing what we're strong at. Nothing too mind-boggling. It was very similar to the last game. The group of lads that are in there, a lot of trust, a lot of belief, blah, blah, blah. Just disappointed we didn't get motoring earlier. You know what they're going to do and the way they're going to play. We were going out to them in ones, trying to press the ball, and he was just popping it off to the next guy. You need to go out to them in twos or threes and try to cover the out ball. It was a matter of putting a bit more pressure and trying not to be as deep. We were a lot more physical. There was a lot more contact in the second half. I think that's the key point there, where Mayo's identity in the first half was kind of like, oh, it's an All-Ireland semi-final. They've killed us. They've absolutely annihilated us in short bursts before. Let's not let that happen. In the second half, they were actually, we have a game plan. We need to stick to that. And that's be physically aggressive. You are the one who knocks. You are the one who is going to be bringing that pressure, that rock and roll style, heavy metal. And it's the only way to do it, right?
100%. Like how many times over the last number of years have we seen Kieran Kilkenny take that ball, say, under the Hogan stand and canter across the pitch all the way to the Cusick, nearly unopposed, soloing across, looking for runners, you know, and teams have said, oh no, we're okay, we're zonal inside, we're marking the inside men, and we're okay here. We have them all the way out there. When actually it never works, never ever works. Like you have to, the first man you have to apply the pressure on is him. And uncharacteristic, if you watch his performance in the second half, he gave 4 or 5 balls away. I'd say if he ever sits back and watches it, I'd say he'd kill himself, because he threw up kind of 50-50 hand passes. He threw up some loose kicks. Some really, really odd, strange things. But of course, pressure causes you to do that. You know, the head is fried and you're making decisions that you wouldn't normally do. So absolutely right. And I think, again, and people dismiss the Meath performance. I'm not going back, but the second half, there was a ball that came down and Lavin got a hand in on Con O'Callaghan. It was the first time where Meath really went toe-to-toe with them. The ball went up the field and Meath got the goal. And straight from that situation, Meath pressed and harried and hit all around the field. And Mayo did the same. They just harried. They corralled Dublin players into little pockets. Then one fella got a tackle on. They were on the ball. They were hitting them. They were trying their best just to return the ball. And, you know, Dublin... Like, I mean, they you know, really, they self-destructed, Ger. You know, that's the only thing you could have to say. They self-destructed from a setup point of view. They self-destructed from a discipline point of view, and they most definitely self-destructed just from actually, you know, their normal cool heads and calm under pressure. So, you know, Horan hit the nail on the head there. Like, I mean, it wasn't rocket science. But it was just an increased level of intensity. And to be fair, you know, Mayo can do that because they have fellas who have an unbelievable level of conditioning. Like there was a spell in it, if you remember, Keegan gets his point, I think on around, I think it was around 50 odd minutes. And Dublin are on the attack and he's probably standing at around a 21 with Con O'Callaghan right beside him. And he's marking O'Callaghan. And as the ball breaks down on his left-hand side, he just goes. You can't see him going, but what ends up happening, he ends up coming into the frame of the picture at around 40, 45 metres out, collects the ball, steadies himself, banks it over the bar. And O'Callaghan was under pressure, as was Kilkenny, covering those runs all day. And we saw that obviously when the pullback that O'Callaghan did on him. So that energy, that enthusiasm, that intensity, that desire to drive on was ultimately what made Mayo win the game.
It's so strange, Anthony, what happened after half-time, because at half-time, you're looking at Dublin on 10 points, Mayo on 4 points, and you're saying to yourself, this game is over because I can't see Mayo getting to 20 points. That was my rationale, that Mayo absolutely needed to get to 20 points to have a chance of winning this game, but because they were on 4 points, they had no hope. And as it turned out, even after extra time, they were still 3 points short of the 20. 20 is what Dublin got in the final last year. I think it was 21-19 in the finals in 2019. So it is like clockwork, the fact that Dublin hit that target in every single game. The difference this year, though, is that Dublin's goals had started to dry up. They didn't get a goal on Saturday night. They got goals in all those 3 games that I'd referenced. It does seem astonishing that Dublin witnessed these goals drying up all season long and still maintained the same game plan on Saturday, that they hadn't tweaked something to try and be a little bit more aggressive, to be a little bit more direct.
I think going from, you know, I know we discussed this a couple of weeks ago, and I've heard of, you know, different people chatting about it on off the ball over the last couple of weeks, whereas people have been asking, you know, what has changed? Would this be allowed under Jim Gavin? So the idea that, you know, fellas are taking kind of pot shots from 40 odd metres with the outside of the right boot, this kind of thing. And, you know, I was even saying that, look, under Jim Gavin, you had certain players who took shots on and certain players who didn't. And that was just the doctrine, and that's what you believed in, and everyone believed in that. Whether you believed in it or not, you just did it. But it's funny, people would probably feel that Desi and his management team are a bit more kind of, you know, loose with regard to giving the players a bit more responsibility and saying, no, look, go try things. But actually, his play is actually more cautious than Jim Gavin's. And the way they're setting up is more cautious than Jim Gavin's. They continuously do this possession game out around the 45 and 50, going over and back, over and back, over and back. A couple of backdoor cuts, a few things of guys coming in, but they don't do it like Donegal. They don't run those really hard angles. They don't kick the ball in. If you remember last year and a couple of years ago, they had kind of Kilkenny in on the square a couple of times, and they'd launch a long ball in on him and see would he cause mayhem. More than likely he'd catch it or he'd get fouled. They don't do that anymore. They don't have that electric pace coming from the half-back positions, a la Jack McCaffrey or Merchant. They seem to go to a certain area on the field and then nearly put the brakes on. And I don't think there's enough movement inside. Now, maybe the players inside feel, well, you know what, I'm not going to get the ball here, so I'm just going to hang out in the corners and look to loop around. And I think players have worked that out, and Mayo worked it out. Mayo put 2 guys in that central column around the number 6 position. So anything that was kind of looped around or anything that was going to be worked intricately, they were there, they had players. So a lot of the people outside, like Fenton and Howard and these guys, had nowhere to go with the ball, bar lateral. So, I think it's an amazing statistic to think that, they had a situation where, okay, it was 10-4 at halftime. It probably should have been 10-7. Like Aidan O'Shea, for all his woes, he should have had probably easy 2 points in the first half, and he should have got another one in the second half. He should have had 3 on the board for himself. But, I take your point that, you would have thought that they would normally, Dublin would rack up 18, 19, 20 scores. And you're right, most teams will go in figuring we have to at least score that. So to see the demise of that from a forward play, maybe the writing was on the wall, maybe it was already there, because, if you even go back to, I think the very first game they had in the championship, they didn't light it up on the scoreboard either.
Against Wexford, yeah. Yeah,
against Wexford. So I think it's more of a, does he have the forwards? Absolutely, he does have the forwards. But I just think I think they changed to being understanding maybe the statistics on the game and thinking, okay, if we hold possession for 65% or 60% of a game, and we look to probe every now and again, or we look to get frees, or we look to get a man open, or we look for the opposition to make a mistake, well, then we'll get scores. And it's funny, if you play that game of that constant moving across, perversely enough, it actually gives you the opposition a bit of a break, because the opposition can take a bit of a breather, and the opposition can essentially set up to counter-attack you. And if the opposition are bringing the intensity that Mayo brought at that spell, where they're really up, as soon as a loose hand pass or a loose ball goes, or a bit of a spill on a dirty night or anything like that, and they get it bang, they're gone with unbelievable pace. They're obviously fresh, and they're able to counter-attack you, whereas you're all set up trying to kind of probe and slowly kind of get a score. So, it's a game plan that essentially every time you attack, if you're holding the ball for 4 or 5 minutes and you're going across and fellas are making runs, you better make sure you score, because if the opposition gets it, that's like a score for the opposition, and now they have you in a counter-attack, and essentially that's what happened.
Just for some breaking news this morning, that Liam Sheedy has announced that he is stepping down as the Tipperary manager. His management team have gone. Tipperary GAA have issued a statement on their website this morning. So we'll get more reaction and analysis on that a little bit later on. I don't know if it was expected. I think there was definitely a thought that it might happen, but it has been confirmed this morning on the Tipperary GAA website that Liam Sheedy is stepping down as the Tip manager. Let's go back to the Gaelic football and the Dubs. Could they have done something differently? Did Dublin need to iterate and be more aggressive? Because at half time you're saying that this plan is working. Like, I know you're saying it could be 10-7, it could have been 1-10. Like, Dublin also missed some chances in that first half.
They did, and James McCarthy, pretty much right from the throw-in, comes down the field and kicks the ball, has a goal shot. Pascal's one after the John Small hit. If he flicks the ball across to John Small, it's probably a goal, and he probably has a shot himself. So, Dublin could have had 2-10. I think, it's funny, Ger. I think when a true champion, which Dublin have been over the last number of years, is going to fall on a sword, I don't think it happens. I think it's a build-up, and it's a collection of a lot of things. But ultimately, the team that beat them have to have more desire, and it's those small little moments. It's the tiny little 1% that actually make the difference in the end. It's not the big things. It's not the missed goal chances. And people say, well, that's probably a stupid remark, but those things will go either way, right? It's the small little things, because the small little things sets the tone for the game. It sets the tone that you're never going to give up. You're not going to give in. You're going into the dressing room at the end of this game, and you're going to go in absolutely just out on your feet, dead. Like, you're going to empty every single thing you had. And ultimately, I think that is what actually happened. I think Dublin tried to go to the well. They went to it again. And when they went to it a third time, I think they found that the well was dry. And the well was certainly not dry for Mayo. They grew in confidence. Every hit they got, every ball they turned over, every lost cause they chased. There's that kind of very famous picture now going around of Dermot O'Connor chasing that 45. If that was a normal situation where he was getting frustrated and he didn't believe, he would have just given out and the ball would have went out over the sideline. He wouldn't have even chased that. Instead, he went, or the end line, he ran and ran and ran. And like, let's be honest, most fellas would just give out to the fella who kicked the ball in and say, Jesus, come on, lads, let's get the next kick out. That was a lost cause, a complete lost cause. There was another situation, I think, coming near the 5 or 6 minutes into the first half of extra time where a ball was in around the middle and one of the Mayo lads gets a hand on it and it was a mill. It was like a scrum in the middle of the field and James McCarthy went down to get it and Mayo just jumped on it. I mean, they went in, they didn't care about their heads, they didn't care about themselves. They went in, they jumped on the ball and managed to pop it up. And I remember I just looked at the frame. McCarthy's lying on the ground, he's kind of holding his shoulder and it looked like, well, there's our last leader that we had to take out. And he was kind of on the ground as the play went. And you could it was like there was this kind of a sense of resignation on his body, that he was like, okay, that's it. That was the last 50-50. That was the last battle. And we've lost that one too. And I think ultimately, again, that's what happens. That's what happens to the great teams. And to be fair to Dublin, they didn't go down easy. They fought and fought and fought. But I think ultimately just Mayo had more in the tank in the end.
The Dermot O'Connor thing, I think, isn't getting enough credit for the actual technique of it. Of course, like the hunger is the main thing there. But it's straight on the volley. When I saw the picture, Kung Fu. I thought for whatever reason I had in my head, it trickled. It was on the half volley or something, and it was one of those that he eventually got to. But it's straight on the volley. To get power behind that was incredible. It's just thinking about some of the different aspects of the Mayo performance. Anthony, they had on the Sunday game last night Rob Henley's kickouts, and Henley was amazing. We can't take anything away from him. It was possibly his best game in a Mayo shirt. But even if you are in amazing form, coming up against a set of forwards and a middle third of that quality from Dublin, you should probably be losing a few more kickouts than he did on Saturday. Or am I totally missing the point here that his amazingness completely superseded what Dublin or any opposition could have done to him on the night?
You know what? I think Dublin again will look back on it, Eoin, and I was surprised. They gave him a lot of outs on his left-hand side. Just a short little kick out, just out. They again. I don't know. I don't think it was an arrogance thing. I don't think if they decided actually we'd give them a few kickouts and we'd set up back here. But I think Dublin needed to. Dublin should have made more hay in that first half. Mayo were there really for the taking, and Dublin, we spoke about it, they should have had 113, 114 on the board because Mayo were lacking in energy. I think they were too concentrated on the high ball into Aidan O'Shea. So there was a lot of lateral movement from them, and then someone got a ball and they just basically stuck it up in the air, caused a bit of mayhem. Yes, we could have got 1 or 2 scores from it, but what it meant was that there was a situation where they didn't have that energy running through the middle of the field. And Mayo, when they're at their best, is when they're off the shoulder, 2 or 3 runners, and they're just coming at you in waves and waves and waves. That's the way we've seen them over the last number of years, and that's when they're at their best. So I think Dublin will look back on it. Henley was, I think he was amazing to kick the score. I still don't know why it was retaken, right? There's been various different, it'll be like the JFK situation, why did it happen? Who did it? And who allowed it? I don't know if it was Philly McMahon, I don't know if it was Kenny, I don't know if it was Maurice Deegan. But what? 16
on the field was 16 Mayo players on the field was the official. It's kind of like.
Oh, was that it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
well, then.
But at what point did Henley know that was the case, and at what point did the ref and the linesman decide? The other thing is, I think if he'd missed it, the ball was coming out, and Mayo were so dominant at that point that, as opposed to the extra 2.5 minutes that didn't get played, the referee blows up after that, the absolute chaos and carnage. Let's not get into the refereeing because we could spend an hour complaining about the misuse of umpires and all that kind of stuff. But can Desi regenerate this team?
It's funny. There's a great article there. Jackie Tyrrell did a good article on Kilkenny in the Irish Times on Saturday, and he's talking about where Kilkenny are with regard to the last number of years and their standing in the game. And he was mentioning the underage teams coming through, and he's mentioned the fact that they haven't really contested many minors and under 21s, etc., over the last number of years. And I'm not saying it, but Dublin have been in a similar situation. Meath hammered them this year in the minor. They've been thereabouts, obviously, because of the pick of players and everything else. But I'm looking there, and you're kind of looking down, and you're looking at fellas who will come on and who will become the next big players. Like Paul Mannion. Is Paul Mannion going to finish forever? Is Jack McCaffrey going to come back? Obviously, those two players coming back would make a big difference. But if you're just picking, if you're looking at who they have now, there's probably going to be a few retirements. And they have had, as everyone has mentioned, they've had an enormous turnover of players over the last certainly 2 seasons, and a lot of big leaders and a lot of big players and a lot of big impact players gone for them. And the thing is, when you have a golden generation like that, your impact player always is your impact player. He's a guy that you continuously bring on. So the young lad who's behind him never really gets much of an opportunity until he's gone. And now it's like, okay, now it's your time to step up. And you're like, well, okay, I'm 24, 25. I've only probably really, the amount of really minutes I've had in championship matches is relatively small. And then you're asked to do the job that this stalwart has done for the last 4 or 5 years in winning All-Irelands and winning games for you. So that's a lot of pressure. And, it's yet to be seen whether Pascal and Costello and these guys can carry the mantle of that. They still have, some of their leaders, some of their main guys are still young enough, of course, to keep battling on. But I think the question marks that we had and lots of people had of whether Dublin were coming into the pack in the last 6 to 12 months, I think the answer is that most definitely yes. And I think the rest of the pack has definitely improved. The question mark is now as well, is this the way it's going to be for the next number of years? And you know what? I hope it is going to be like that for the next number of years, because okay, for the first 50 minutes of that game, it wasn't great, but Jesus, the last 30, 35, 40 minutes of it was just absolutely edge of the seat stuff. And you know what? Hopefully the championship for the next number of years is going to be exactly the same.
If you're Armagh or Monaghan or Kildare or Meath, you're surely looking at what Mayo did and going, so Mayo obviously have a slew of brilliant young athletic footballers. But again, to go back to James Horan's point, it wasn't rocket science. It was, here's our plan, let's stick to it. Physically, we need to bring the challenge. Those counties can do that. It's not like you need 6 or 7 world-class athletes to do that. It's that you need a very clear plan and an identity and a structure that allows the players to know exactly what they're supposed to do in and out of possession of the ball. I've obviously oversimplified it grossly there. But my point is that there's a template there that other teams can use now that they should be aspiring to, as opposed to, well, if we sit back and put 15 men behind the ball, we might only lose this game by 3 or 4 points.
But I think the main thing of all of that, Ger, is belief. It's confidence, it's belief. I didn't think Kildare believed enough. I was disappointed because I think Kildare have a lot of athleticism. I think they have the forwards that would cause you problems. I think they have big men who could match up against them. And I think they just didn't believe enough. They did not put enough intensity and heat on the Dublin players. I think Meath for 35, 40 minutes didn't believe enough. And then when they started to believe, they outscored Dublin and they performed very, very well. I think now it's like everything, when the king is dead, people start going, oh, geez, why didn't I do that? I could have easily done that. Well, it takes the first man to step up and be brave enough and be confident enough and have the belief that actually, do you know what, we can do this. And look, it's only fitting because for the last number of years, who has been that challenger? It has been Mayo more often than not. So I think if anyone was going to put money on who the people would actually, who would dethrone them, it was them. But it gives the Chase Impact belief now. Now, belief isn't the only thing that gets you there, of course. You have to bring all the other things that you mentioned. But I think it can quite often be the missing thing when you have everything else. You have the intensity, you have the fitness, you have the athleticism, you have the skill, you have the power, but the belief is the thing that in that last second or in those small moments that I spoke about, you let the ball go over the end line. You don't chase it down like Dermot O'Connor does. And again, as I said, I don't want to simplify it, but I think that is ultimately what got Mayo there. And got them there, with style.
I have one last question. Will Aidan O'Shea start the All-Ireland final?
Oh, I was thinking about this yesterday, and I was kind of erring on the side that he won't. But at the same time, I think, to be fair to Aidan, I think he could have easily had 3 points, right? Like the one in the second half that he catches. If he sticks his hand up, he just marks that. But he was trying so hard then and trying to kind of catch up and trying to chase the game and his own performance in the game that he was trying to, he caught the ball and he had 2 or 3 guys around. He was trying for a goal and, he comes out then, he tries to get involved around the middle of the field and he gives a bad hand pass away. And you could see the confidence was draining from him. The confidence when he hit the post with the 14-yard free, the confidence was going up in him. I'd say he built himself up a lot, Cher, coming into that game. I don't know, but he was captain of the team. Dublin have seen him as a kind of the main go-to man and a kind of the power of Mayo and a guy that if they can manage to turn him over and hit him and get him, kind of to going backwards, well then they've managed to tick a big box. So I think Aidan probably felt that pressure. He probably felt like, I have to go in here and have a big performance. I'm going to really bully a load of guys. And I think he probably put himself under way too much pressure. That's certainly the way it seemed to me through his performance. But I do think he still adds something that Kerry or Tyrone, as it happens, won't particularly like, which is a fulcrum, a big man in around full forward. It has worked for them already this year. Yeah. I think Horan won't completely abandon it. So I think it's all about his own reaction from his personal point of view and how he trains and how he gets his head right. But I wouldn't be surprised. But personally, is he a guy that you bring in? I don't know. It certainly would lift the crowd, the Mayo crowd, if he comes on with, 25 minutes to go. It would give them something different. But you would have to feel that if they're bringing him in, because they're chasing the game.
Yeah, it's crisis.
And then and it would be high balls in. And, high balls in, they work sometimes, but not all the time.
Is there a plan C here, Anthony? Start him in midfield?
It could be Eoin, with 20, 25 minutes to go, you could say, listen, just go out and spend yourself now. Completely just empty the tank for me for 20, 25 minutes. And, he could do that. But, Croke Park on All-Ireland final day, no matter when it's a big, big pitch. There's a lot of movement. There's a lot of athleticism going on. You see the modern-day midfielder, they're kind of... They're 12, 13 stone, 13 and a half stone. They're not 14, 15 stone anymore. They're guys who are able to motor up and down the pitch. Yes, they're tall, but they're really athletic and lean. They're covering the ground. And it's hard for a fella, Aidan is in remarkable shape this year. He's in the best shape of his life, I would say. But still, I think you could use him potentially at an 11. But I'd say if they were and thinking about it, you're talking about having him inside on the square.
Okay, we've got a couple of weeks, turns out, an extra week to debate that one. Anthony, good stuff. Thanks a million for joining us. Cheers.
No bother, lads.
It's Anthony Moyles with us this morning, trying to make sense of what we've witnessed at the weekend. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. Didn't on go for Dublin to win by 10 points, says Ray on YouTube. He must make Mayo favourites for the final now, surely.
Yes, I did. That's a good point. I've got to tactically think about that, Ray.
If Kerry win, Kerry are favourites. Are they? Or are Mayo automatically favourites now?
Well, we'll see in the power rankings tomorrow who really are the number one team in the country, because, well, Kerry are still All-Ireland favourites, with the bookies.
Are they?
Which tells you a lot, because they've got to go through 2 games and also that Mayo performance. The Mayo are so weird. They're just such a strange entity, aren't they? That they after extra time they scored 17 points and they beat Dublin. I mean, it's just... Again, I don't know, we've laboured this point quite lots of morning, but it's the way they did it. It's the manner of the win. And that just kind of... I'm very much in my shell after my prediction on Friday, but I think the manner of the win would make you even more reluctant to make predictions after the way they did it, and whoever they come up against is going to be strange. But the Aidan O'Shea thing is going to be fascinating. The last time he played Kerry in Croke Park, he was a full back. That is going to be the biggest talking point about this build up to the final, and it'll only be a bigger talking point if it's Kerry that they play in the final.
Bring Donaghy back, is that what you're saying?
Bring Donaghy back, yeah, exactly.
They'll be back next year, lads, says John. They don't become a bad team overnight. He's obviously talking about the Dubs. Let's run you through the sports pages very quickly, and we'll start with We can start with some of the tabloids if we don't have OTBsports.com ready. We do. Tyrone and Kerry, All-Ireland semi-final rescheduled for second time. How do you feel about that, Eoin? Is it actually better for Kerry to have that game, or are we assuming they're going to beat Tyrone? Is that where we are now?
I think that Mayo are a better team than Tyrone. I think that if you can't beat Tyrone, you're not going to beat Mayo. So in many ways, you may as well find it out in the semi-final rather than the final, you know?
Okay. All right. It's 8:44 this morning. I'm delighted to say Mark Lawrenson is with us after a really sensational and very interesting opening weekend to the Premier League. Mark, good morning to you. How are you?
I'm all good, thank you very much.
I don't know whether we start at the start or we start at the end, but maybe no Harry Kane, and everyone's assuming, right, well, you know, it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. I hadn't realised that Nuno has a brilliant record against Pep, and that Pep has a terrible record at the new Spurs Stadium, and everything kind of seemed to roll into one, and they just couldn't score. No matter how long they were playing, it looked like they were never going to score yesterday.
No, yeah, they kind of huffed and they puffed, didn't they? And I think, you know, with Grealish coming into the team, excuse me, that didn't really help. And when I say that, I mean, he has to get used to all the players that he plays with. The last sort of 15, 20 minutes when De Bruyne seemed to get into the match as well, they kind of upped the game a little bit. But as you say, they never really looked like scoring. And if there ever was a case for, we need to buy Harry Kane, it was yesterday.
And does that make it more likely, you think, that the Manchester City hierarchy
Well, Daniel Levy, who I'm sure you all know now, is a kind of man who wouldn't leave you a crumb on a plate. So you just know with him, if City ring up this morning, whatever, and say, come on then, what's the price? He will say it's X, and it's X. It's not X minus, 10% or whatever. That's the way he deals. If you think about Modric wanted to leave. I think he wanted to go to, I think Chelsea were after him when he was at Tottenham. I think obviously Madrid as well. And in the end, Daniel Levy said, no, you can stay another year, right? And then you can go. And I just have a feeling that might be the case with Kane, because you'll know Jonathan Norcroft, who writes for the Sunday Times, etc. He's obviously got a big in there, and his piece yesterday morning was exactly the same as the Modric outcome, which was they're going to tell Kane he's staying for another year, but telling Kane he's staying for another year and Kane actually saying, OK, I'll get on with it, are two completely different things.
How does Kane instantly transform this Manchester City team, for example? If you look at yesterday, are they in need of someone like Harry Kane for the deep-lying version of Harry Kane as much as the goal-scoring prowess?
Absolutely. So, deep line, play the ball up to him. He's very good at holding it up, as we know. And that's something that Grealish is also good at as well, which I think is part of the plan. And just on occasions to get them up the pitch. I mean, the problem that City have is that they're such a good team that opposition just sit in. And you end up on a certain... I mean, yesterday, they just basically played in front of Tottenham. And well done to Tottenham. So that is their problem, is just getting near enough to the goal to basically create enough chances for all the players that they've got, all the outstanding players that they've got. But they looked ordinary yesterday. I mean, Ake, no. Decent player, good enough for Manchester City, no. Zinchenko came on, not a great defender. We saw that as well. So you can understand why they want him, most definitely. And this is a season where I think, the big four, so that's the two Manchester clubs, Liverpool and Chelsea, will all think they've got a chance of winning the league. And I don't think in the last few seasons that's particularly happened. So I think Pep's looking at it and thinking the other thing would be with him is matches against the big teams now, the other three, if you're one of the four, are going to be absolutely crucial. Your results, I should say, not just the matches.
It did feel that there was a degree of similarity about yesterday's performance and the Champions League final performance for Manchester City, where it does look good for a period of time and then you start to analyse where were the clear-cut chances and you count them in one hand. So why does that happen? As you said, that they huff and puff quite a bit. Why is that where they get to against some of these teams and are missing that final little bit of incision? Because the players look like they're certainly good enough.
I think they overplay. I just really seriously think they overplay. The other thing as well is, if you watch them, they don't take many shots from kind of 20, 25 yards. It's almost, you feel on a bad day, and look, they have relatively few bad days, but on the bad days that they have, we want to score a perfect goal. We want to show all the rest of the world we are, an absolutely fabulous team, which they are anyway. But you get that impression that they've got. I'd love to know the stats on, how many goals they actually score from outside the box. Which I wouldn't have thought it's going to be many, and that's a little bit. Sometimes, football is very, very simple when you strip it down, and if you don't shoot, you don't score. So I think that's just a basic thing, but I think it's a Pep thing, isn't it? It's a bit, sometimes with Pep is, he has to be the cleverest man in the room, smarter than everybody, and that doesn't necessarily follow, certainly not in football at that level.
We've traditionally overreacted to the opening day of the season because it's their first experience of football in a long time, but are Spurs going to be a little bit better than we thought this year? Have they got a hope of finishing close to the top four?
Close to the top four, yeah. Not in it, because I still don't think the goalkeeper's that good anymore. Defensively, very, very good yesterday, but no, I don't. I think they've, on a bad day with Tottenham, they are very ordinary, and the problem is you can't have, to win this league, you can't have many bad days, as I think obviously City and Liverpool lately have shown everybody.
Okay, well, let's move on, because Liverpool had Virgil van Dijk back and he was playing alongside Joe Matip. I think they played 11 minutes together last season. It's a transformative moment for them, and still they were relatively ordinary themselves for the first part of the game, but the substitutions happen and suddenly the team sparks into life again. So a stereotypical Klopp performance in some ways, in that for a while they're okay and then they're brilliant.
Yeah, but you'd take it, wouldn't you? So listen, it's one of those. I think when you play a newly promoted team, very first game of the season, it's always a little bit not difficult, probably awkward as much as anything, because that team obviously play as though it's a cup final for them, and it is, because of they come up from the Championship, etc., etc. But I think they were always comfortable. I mean, I think probably in a couple of occasions Norwich got in down the left of Liverpool's defence. But apart from that, really didn't produce anything. And you always felt once Liverpool got into a kind of little bit of rhythm and they started to create chances. The thing with them is, the front three and, well, you can call it the front four, obviously, because there's Firmino as well who came on. But they look very, very sharp, to be honest with you. And I tell you something, I mean, I don't know how other teams train pre-season, but Klopp trains his team like a dog. They really seriously, they work unbelievably hard. He took them to Austria, didn't he? Sometimes they do 3 sessions a day, all those kind of things, because he has this big thing about, if you give them that kind of bed of fitness, you're always never far away from it. And this guy hardly gives them a day off. It's just all the time. It's kind of, they've got to be at it, which occasionally doesn't work, because when you get loads of injuries and everything, obviously then there's a real problem and your performances drop off. But honestly, when you see them training some days, you think, oh my goodness, good luck with that.
It was a midfield three of Milner, Oxlade-Chamberlain, Naby Keita that started the game.
Yeah.
Obviously, Tsimikas has come in and slotted right in place of Andy Robertson. Looks amazing. Go ahead.
But the other thing that, I mean, I hadn't really seen him. I'd seen odd bits about him. 2-footed. I mean, how unusual is that? He was just as easy on his right foot. So the way he looked at the weekend, I know he wasn't really tested, but in terms of going forward, he looked so comfortable. And if he couldn't cross it with his left, he just turned it onto his right and fed it in that way. So, if you're thinking Trent on the other side, it was outstanding, I thought, on Saturday as the game went on. He's probably looking at the Greek boy and thinking, hold on a minute, he could play right back as well. So he looks a decent signing.
I was just going to make the point, is Liverpool's depth a little bit better than we actually thought pre-season?
Yeah, it is. And I mean, you wouldn't have picked that middle three, would you? In all honesty, when you looked at it, you thought, no, I don't really think this is going to work. Listen, this is a big season for Naby Keita. He can play. There's no doubt about it, and you know all the players around him think he's a real player. And Thiago's a bit similar insofar as they get in and get injured. And Matip's another one. So, all those three guys are very, very good players. I mean, Thiago's an outstanding player. But therein lies the problem, which obviously something that Klopp's are wary of, is that they tend to get injured and they don't have a little calf strain. They're out for like 6 weeks, 2 months, all those kind of things. So, Henderson will be back in, won't he? And Jones, etc. So I still think they need another. Well, they know they need another midfield player. Whether they'll get one, I'm not sure. I'm not sure who's available anymore now.
Getting Van Dijk on a brand new contract before he's made his competitive return from an ACL injury speaks volumes about the confidence that Liverpool have in his comeback. How did he look to you? How was he moving, in your opinion?
Oh, he was had his slippers on and a cigar, didn't he, for most of the game? He wasn't really tested, but it's one of those. It'll take a while for him. I think it was almost 10 months. But I think the biggest thing is not so much that people would, inside the club would analyse the way that he played. It would be the way that he moved, and also that when there's a challenge to be made, he made that challenge. And when you have a really serious injury like that, it's that challenge where you think you go into a tackle and you think, I might get injured, and it was easy for him in the end. But there'll be more difficult tests, most definitely. But what it is when he plays with Matip, he makes Matip such a better player, because Matip's, I think, he's got like a real kind of almost insular personality. He's not a talker when he plays, etc. But he knows when he's with Van Dijk, he can come out on sorties into midfield. And that's what he did at the weekend. I thought he was one of the best players, because he came into the Norwich midfield and he engaged one of their midfield players, and he was releasing Trent down the right-hand side and other people as well. And he just becomes a better player. It's almost like, I've got my guardian with me. I can go out and play, and I know everything behind me is going to be absolutely fine.
Can I ask you a little bit about David Moyes, West Ham? The level of excitement around them, and the performance, and all the good stuff that they had last year back, and they're looking forward to a European campaign. Things have never really been better for West Ham.
No, that's right. And I know he's after one or two, maybe even three players before the window. Spoke to him yesterday after the match, and he just said
just about to get the insight on how Moisey was feeling.
He was ringing him there saying, don't give away any of my transfer. No, he's gone. The line's gone. We'll try and get him back. So we'll do the rest of the sports pages for you. Desi Days is the back page of the Herald this morning. Dubs manager faces questions after Mayo implosion. No Harry, but Spurs stun City, and Tyrone get lifeline as semi-final is put back. The back page of the Irish Independent. Kerry paved the way for extra week. Looks like Kerry have done their bit to make sure this happened, and the picture is of the Meath women's football team after a stunning comeback against Cork. 7 points down, 3 minutes left in the clock, and they score 2-1 to get it into extra time, and then they win in extra time, just like Mayo did. The front page of the Irish Times is Mayo bring Dublin era to a close with gripping extra time victory, and that's a couple of the Mayo players embracing. Our Tyrone versus Kerry semi-final refixed for August 28th, and Nuno expects Kane to get ready after Spurs upset City. Interesting that's a viewpoint now that they're going to keep him for a year. It'd be very interesting to see what he can do in that team, wouldn't it?
The temptation is to get a little bit carried away by that result yesterday and think that Harry Kane can help this team break that top four that everybody really believes is kind of ring fence at this point. I think it would still take a massive season from Spurs for them to be able to do that, because as we saw last year, it didn't happen with Kane and Son just shooting the lights out. They did look really good defensively yesterday, it must be said, like Davinson Sanchez and Tanganga in particular, probably with two of their better performances, certainly Sanchez. And you do kind of forget, though, that there are other stars in that team who maybe we haven't seen the best of in a Premier League context. Like Lucas Moura is one of those people. His best moment definitely came in the Champions League, obviously. Stephen Bergwijn as well, another player who maybe hasn't hit high levels consistently, but you start to see glimpses from these players every so often where it's like, if these guys find a run of form in any way, that they are good enough to beat teams like Manchester City on a consistent basis. So it's definitely relatively hopeful for Spurs. But if you're Harry Kane, I still think you want to get out of there. You want to get, because you're not going to win the Premier League with this team.
The Daily Mail back page, Tyrone relief, and then they also have Harry Hu, Spurs star son eclipses City's blue moon, and faithful football fairy tale is awfully down Rossies to claim the under-20 title. That one went out a little bit under the radar today in terms of the coverage, but obviously we'll get into it across the week, and hopefully we're going to see a lot more from those young fellas from Offaly. Match of delay.
Top of the morning to you.
Kerry agreed to wait another week as Tyrone revealed their COVID chaos. Offaly's leap of faith, broken jaw for Eoin McLaughlin suffered a double fracture to his jaw. No Harry, no problem for Spurs is the headline on that one. Spurs humble the champions. Federer fights for his career. We haven't talked about this. Roger Federer is having surgery on a knee injury, and he is talking about having all of his health in later life, but also saying this is going to give him the best opportunity to get back. So, back page of the Guardian. England hope for a win target not above 220, says Moyles. That's in the Test series at the moment. And Nuno moves to clamp down on Kane mutiny. He's done a good job of it. Got the fans on side. And I don't know, things are looking pretty good for Nuno at the moment. Fans turn on Kane over his plans to leave, says the Telegraph. Kelly Zeros is the front page headline of The Sun. This is Kelly Harrington, who is set to take home over 500 grand in the next 3 years in sponsorship deals. And Harry Kane, Nuno in get fit and help team plea, but misfiring City need him ASAP after Son stunner. And jaw jacked. Eoin McLaughlin yesterday underwent surgery on a double jaw fracture. He was taken to hospital on Saturday night after suffering an injury during a heavy challenge by John Small in the All-Ireland Senior Football Championship semi-final, for which the Dublin player received no disciplinary action from referee Conor Lane. And the Daily Mirror says, who needs Harry? We do. That's who needs Harry's in white, and we do is in blue. And the front page headline, Taekwondo star attack horror. It says Jack won't use fight skills on street. The mum of martial arts Olympian randomly attacked on the street said he chose not to use his skills to fight back. Guardian are investigating after Jack Woolley, who's 22, was punched in the face in Dublin on Saturday night. It was an unprovoked attack, and horrific pictures on Jack Woolley's Instagram. We wish him all the very best in his recovery. One of the breakout personalities of the Olympics, obviously suffered devastation in the Olympic Games, but there's two pictures he posted on Instagram. One of him on the bridge in Dublin, and then 2 minutes later there's another one of him absolutely covered in blood. So horrific scenes, and I'm sure you're going to hear more about that over the next while. Mark Lawrenson is back on the phone with us. Mark, we were just talking about West Ham and the sense of excitement and anticipation they have, and you said you were chatting with David Moyes after the game yesterday.
Yeah, and he was obviously, extremely pleased. I didn't really mention the penalty. I thought that was really, really soft. But I think the thing with him is he took the players pre-season to St Andrews, and quite a lot of the time they trained on the beach and everything. And I think he quite likes that sort of, let's not go on a tour. Mind you, hardly anyone could go on a tour anyway because of the pandemic and stuff. But it's very much where he gets everybody together, and he doesn't half work them hard. I mean, we spoke before about Klopp with his players. It's very much a Moyes trait, which is they're very, even on a bad day when they don't play well, they still work extremely hard. And he just says to me, he's got a really, really good bunch of players, and says you wouldn't believe the attitude of the two Czech Republic boys. He said it's just fabulous. So, I mean, I think they both have to new contracts, which I'm pretty sure they'll probably get anyway because they've been outstanding on the pitch. But he just said those two lads, since the day they signed, both of them, of course, signed separately, he said they just work and work and work on the training ground. And they said and they stay on the training ground and work on stuff that they don't think they're very good at. And he said they do that on their own bat. He said it's nothing to do with the training staff or anything. They just stay behind and get on with this. And I think when other players see that as well, and you start to get positive results, and then you've obviously got a really good mix of players also. But obviously, he just says they're a really good bunch and they want to learn and they work hard, which probably is why they are where they are, alongside obviously outstanding ability.
Who are they in the market to sign, Mark?
Say again?
Who are they in the market to sign? You were mentioning there that he's hopeful of
I
getting...
don't know. I didn't ask. I never ask him that. And then if it leaks, he can't ring me up and give me a bollock.
That's fair enough. The performance of side Benrahma is something that obviously last year came under a lot of focus, but sometimes players mature and settle in and grow into roles at different stages, and there's a lot of responsibility on him this year. They paid big money for him last year, and it kind of went under the radar a bit that he wasn't brilliant, but actually there's an opportunity for him to really step forward.
Yeah, well, Moyes is the same with him. He just said he's worked very, very hard from day one, and he said he found the transition a little bit difficult. And as you say, the thing is, if you sign a striker, you just want him to score straight away because that's all about the confidence thing. And he was kind of in and out. But he said he never had a problem with him with his attitude or his work rate or anything. And he said you could see he's obviously got lots of ability. But it's like when you sign players, you are really, really lucky. If you sign somebody and you put him straight in the team and he hits it off, because for many different reasons. So you've gone from a championship to a Premier League team, and I know what it's like. At first day in training, you've got to try to prove yourself to the players that you are a player. You look around the dressing room, and obviously you're a little bit nervous, etc. And you're thinking, that they need to. I need to show them that I've got this ability. I can work hard and everything. And the best way to get accepted in a dressing room is by coming in and starting to look at player, and players would turn around to each other and go, wow, he's not bad, this fellow we've signed. And I think he's always had that, but he's just, in terms of on the pitch, he's never quite delivered. But, I think Moyes thinks this year that he very much will do.
Last one for me, is Paul Pogba capable of maintaining this form for the entire season? And if he does that make Manchester United newly favourites for the league? Is it that important if he can play this well?
I'm going to go no and no.
Fair enough.
Listen, it was outstanding, but there's something with Pogba which I'm not quite sure. I mean, he just sort of played free at the weekend, which obviously with the 4 assists, etc. He looks a world class player, and he looks a world class player when he plays for France. But, and there's always a but, which is he's got all this ability. Does he use it every single week? No. Is he defensively a little bit of a problem for Manchester United? Yes. I mean, they were really, really good against Leeds, and it's very difficult. But Leeds were without the best player as well for me, Phillips. But no, I don't. I think the challenge, I don't see them being capable of winning it, because I'm still not sort of convinced by Ole Gunnar Solskjaer whether at the moment he actually knows his best team. I'm just not convinced of him as a manager. Super bloke, but I think there's still probably a lot of questions that need answering.
How big an addition will Raphael Varane be in order to boost their title hopes?
Well, listen, he's a very, very good player. But have you seen his record in La Liga in terms of how many games he's played? Excuse me, over the last 5 years. It isn't impressive. You kind of think he plays every single game. He misses lots and lots of games. Now, I'm a little bit worried about that, because obviously the Premier League is completely different, and it's far more physical than La Liga. I have no doubt he's an outstanding player when you've got him fit. It's easy for him. We talk about Van Dijk and everything. He's not too dissimilar to Van Dijk, but whether he plays enough games, I think that's the big question mark. His kind of ability, etc., is not up for question. It's just whether you get enough games out of it. But then I suppose if you've got Lindelof and Maguire there as well, they might be able to deal with that.
We will see. Mark, good stuff. Thanks a million.
Pleasure.
It's Mark Lawrenson giving us some thoughts there this morning. We didn't even get into Arsenal. How Arsenal were Arsenal on Friday night on?
Unbelievably Arsenal, to be honest. But what Arsenal has shifted considerably from what Arsenal used to be at the end of Wenger, which was relatively decent creatively, could put their stamp on a game, could control a game, and then miss a heap of chances. As we know, that has changed drastically over the last couple of years, to the point where they are submissive against teams such as Brentford, as it were, on Friday night. clearly second best. Embarrassing the way in which Brentford scored their second goal, a Rory Delap-like throw into the box, which is allowed to bounce right in front of Ben White, who cost £50 million, by the way, bounce over his head and then nodded into the back of the net. I appreciate that being a £50 million centre-back joining Arsenal is like signing your own death warrant, really. It's basically career suicide joining Arsenal as a centre-back, and I'm not hopeful whatsoever for the season ahead, as you might be able to gather.
OTB will be bringing you live Premier League commentary every Sunday across the season with exclusive radio coverage. We were back with a bang this weekend. Stephen Doyle and Keith Tracy called West Ham's 4-2 win against Newcastle, and Brian Kerr joined Nathan for City's 1-0 defeat to Spurs. Here's Brian on whether Man City or Manchester United have a better attack.
If you're a manager, which attacking team would you prefer? Manchester United or Manchester City, with the options that are there?
I think Manchester United at the moment, their attacking part of their team is really the potential that's there is massive. No, Martial come on briefly at the end of the match yesterday. Rashford doesn't play, but still. On overall team at the moment, I think Manchester City have the better team. I think they've got the better goalkeeper. I think that we've got to wait and see how Varane fits in at Manchester United. There was a couple of reasons why he's still not at Real Madrid. One of them is that he wasn't playing great. He looked vulnerable at times last year and lacking a bit of pace at times. So they didn't go out on a limb. I know they have a money problem, but they didn't go out on a limb to make sure he stayed. So we have to see how he settles into English football, where Real Madrid are usually dominating matches, except for about 4 or 5 matches a season. They're on top, and it's about playing right in the back and looking nice and being on your guard, and it's 2 against 1 at the back. It won't be the same in the Premier League. You'll have lots to think about. So let's see where that one goes. Lindelof, I thought, had an excellent game yesterday, by the way. I've never been a big critic of his by any means. But but I think Manchester City have the better team. But Manchester United have the better attacking setup, I think.
All right, 10 minutes past 9 this morning. I know you've all been waiting for this moment. We are joined officially by Nathan Murphy, the King of Mayo. How are you? You're not in your jersey. I thought you'd have your jersey on. I thought you'd festooned. I thought you'd have like a mini Sam Maguire there celebrating, because it felt like you were celebrating the victory of all victories, that the curse was over, finally lifted on Saturday evening under lights.
Well, in some ways it was the victory of all victories. Mayo have beaten the greatest team that we have ever seen, having been 7 points down at one stage, having been 2 points down in injury time. I think if you're not able to celebrate a win like that, when are you going to celebrate? This was the semi-final. We know what you're going to say, Jared, that Mayo people will lose the run of themselves and they haven't won Sam.
No, you should.
And all that remains.
Sorry, look, I realise that it's Friday evening. You probably weren't listening, but we had John Maughan on, and he was talking about the excitement, and I made the point. That's the whole point about being a sports fan, about loving a team, and you're supposed to lose the run of yourselves. Like, I don't know if you've seen David Brady's Liquor Gale. It was on immediately after. Was it after the game? It was on over the weekend anyway. TG Carr, brilliant timing, and he just explains why football means so much to Mayo people, and I buy it. I get it. I understand it now.
Well, everywhere I looked at Croke Park at full time, there were people in tears, and I think it was partly the fact that people were back in a stadium and that there was 24,000 people, and having missed out last year and Mayo getting to an All-Ireland final, not really meaning as much because of the fact that nobody could actually get there, to have a moment to celebrate in such unexpected fashion. They're always the best wins, where you're going in firstly as an underdog, but then at half-time thinking, this is done. But I remember about 2-3 minutes before half-time, just on the corner of the Cusack and the Davin stand, that sort of thumping Mayo started up. And at this stage, Mayo are 7 points down. And I was thinking, the fans have turned up. They've given their backing. This was something James Horan touched on 7-8 years ago, that he felt Mayo fans were very quiet. And ever since then, that chant has come when Mayo have needed them. And out of that, Mayo kicked the point just before half-time and just emerged a completely different side. And it was a absolute jubilation. It was what I would imagine almost winning an All-Ireland would be like. The sense of euphoria, the sense of shock, I think, as well, that it had actually happened, considering how comfortable Dublin looked for so long, and the fact that this Dublin side are so talented, have had so much on Mayo over the last few years. I think nobody could quite believe what they had just seen. So it was a really, really special occasion, and probably no harm for Mayo that the match has been pushed back another week, and maybe James Horan can go and let the players soak this in for a few more days and then get down to business. But listen, the fans will lose the run of themselves. Horan is the only calm Mayo man I think there's ever been. He never, ever loses the run of himself. Barely a smile. He was trying to keep it in as all the backroom staff were jumping all over him, and Kieran
he wasn't.
Was hugging him.
I thought he let himself go in the moment. He did. Definitely.
For about half a second, and then the serious walk across the pitch. But, he knows what an achievement that was, and what an achievement for Horan. Again, this period of transition since he's come back is back-to-back All-Ireland finals. You look now and think, was relegation to Division 2 the worst thing, where Mayo could quietly go about their business, try out lots and lots of players, get them some game time, integrate them ever more into the squad, and be ready to unleash them? But, some new heroes came forward. We're sort of used to naming that Mayo team under Horan and Rochford, and you can sort of go through 1 to 15, who the starting 15 would have always been up to 2017. Like, this is a totally new, young, fresh Mayo side who, on Saturday, it didn't look like they had a huge amount of scar tissue with the way they went about it in extra time.
What was your specific reaction? Was it tears flowing? Was it Mayo chanting at full time? Do you even remember what it was?
I brought my 2 kids, so I had one Mayo fan, one Dublin fan, and I thought I was quite calm. But as we got back home, they were telling their mother the stories of Daddy using a lot of curse words, saying a lot of things. I think I lost the run of myself a little bit. It was just, I thought it was gone. Even as Mayo were eking their way back in during that second half, point by point, slowly, there were a couple of moments where they got rapid fire points, but generally it took a long time. And even 71, 72 minutes, they're still 2 points down. I never thought they were going to level it up. I never thought they were going to win. I just thought Dublin will slow it down, will see it out. And I think the moment that you realise this is gone completely haywire was the pass from Evan Comerford back to Davy Byrne on the goal line. Considering at the start of that move, Dublin were in such a comfortable position where you just would see them go into a 20 pass move and would slowly work it up the pitch. Probably wouldn't score, but it wouldn't matter. They'd win a free on the halfway line, slow it down, and that'd be the game. But the absolute panic that set in, I never thought I would see from this Dublin side. And that moment where it was passed back on the line and he was fumbled over the goal line, you just thought, if Robbie Henley can score this, like, Dublin are gone. And Mayo should have won it in normal time. You look back at the footage and James McCarthy, it has to be a free for what he did to Jeremy O'Connor. The referee decided, actually, let's just get them all off the pitch. Even though there's definitely a couple of minutes left, considering there was 7 minutes of injury time and everything we'd seen. You would have worried at that stage Dublin get in and regroup, but it was just nothing there in the tank. You could tell then it was gone for Dublin, that they probably left it all out there. And to see experienced players like McCarthy make so many mistakes and such ill discipline was a bit of a shock. But somehow Mayo find themselves back in an All-Ireland final again.
And only Kerry or Tyrone stand between them and ultimate glory.
Well, listen, it's just be an honour for the Mayo players to be on the pitch with the greatest of all time, and to share it with David Clifford, and his first All-Ireland title is something I'm sure will live long in the memory for everybody. So
you say it now, Nathan. You want to be careful. You want to be careful. You don't somehow manifest that into existence.
It's not a 2006 where this young guy called Kieran Donaghy who is emerging, and Mayo go, we don't need to mark him. Let him at it. What's the worst that can happen?
Nathan, I mean, if it is Kerry, I think there just has been a lack of Mayo Tyrone meetings in Croke Park to talk about. But if it is Kerry, I mean, your recent memories of Croke Park playing Kerry must be positive. It's been 10 years since Kerry had beaten them in Croke Park. 2014 was a draw. The defeat happens in Limerick. 2017 was a draw, and then Mayo win the replay in Croke Park. The 2019 league final was a Mayo win. I mean, you must be genuinely, quietly confident.
Well,
quietly?
Not as confident as you are, Eoin, clearly, considering you're already talking about Kerry being in an All-Ireland final before the semi-final.
He did say if it's Kerry.
Really, but that's not what he's thinking. He's already planning. He's already booked his hotel for the week before to go down to Castlebar to just wind up the Mayo supporters. It's a very different thing, Mayo against Kerry, Mayo against Dublin, but all we're hearing is that this is a brand new star-studded Kerry, and like a Sean O'Shea, David Clifford, are a pretty frightening prospect for any defence. And also, like, Mayo haven't been flawless so far. Like, how slowly did they start against Galway? How slowly did they start on Saturday? There's only so many times you can find yourself 6-7 points down in a game before it's going to come and bite you, and you're not going to be able to summon up the reserves to get yourself back into it. So I think Horan has a massive amount of work to do to make sure that they start games better and are more aggressive, and actually maybe just play to Mayo's DNA. Go with the shock and awe, go with the 100 miles an hour, and leave it all out there and get at a team good and early and use that emotion. And maybe it'll be easier in All Ireland Fund. Maybe it's impossible not to have let it into him. Yeah, play it all at full forward and let it into him.
Right. Congratulations. I mean, well done.
Thanks. Quite a few weeks ahead.
Yeah. All right. Nathan, good stuff.
You don't mean it, Jer. You don't mean it.
I do. I don't begrudge you yet. After you win and you become completely insufferable, you know, it's important to start talking about being humble in victory. That would be important for both of you. It'd be very important for both of you to bear this in mind.
It's just going to be something different, you know. It's like we're gonna see who are the new dickheads in town who can't handle being victorious, because all it's been is the Dubs are arrogant when they win. It's either going to be arrogant Kerry people, arrogant Tyrone people, or arrogant Mayo people, and you're going to hate whoever it is of the three of us.
Yes, we are.
So
well, it's the worst. It's the worst in a way. I know Dublin people are trying to be kind, and I even sense that the Dubs were a bit, you know, bored with winning, because all the Dubs around me were celebrating Mayo wides far more than they were celebrating Dublin points. But by and large, the message you got even going into the ground was, I hope you do it. I hope you do it. And there's a pity and a patronising tone to it that maybe they don't really mean, but it's all I'm taking from it. And I want to be that dickhead. I want to be the ones that everyone's going, God, I hope they never win it again.
You've had a lifetime.
God, I hope that never happens again. That is what we want.
A lifetime of preparation, Nathan. Well trained. Anyway, congratulations. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Thanks for having me, lads.
20 minutes past 9 here on OTB AM. Here's what's coming up on OTB Sports Radio today. OTB Gold at 1 o'clock. It's Colm Gooch Cooper. State of the Union is our rugby discussion from last year. Clive Tilsley in conversation with Sheahan is great at 4 o'clock, and Joe meets Ruby Walsh at 6 as well. We are going to take a quick break. We're back talking an absolutely incredible comeback from the Meath women's team, not just on the day but over the last number of years, with Aisling O'Reilly, who called this a couple of weeks ago. It's a Meath Dublin All-Ireland football final for the women. Next.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
Joey boy, don't be tempted, say it with me here. I was bricking it.
Have you subscribed to the OTB Rugby podcast? If not, here's some of what you've missed in the last week.
The way that officials and officiating is dealt with by the coaches. And I think that these two teams have let down World Rugby. There's no doubt about that.
Subscribe now to the OTB Rugby podcast stream wherever you get your podcasts, or get the entire OTB catalogue on the OTB Sports app.
Car insurance is boring, but you don't have to be. Get Set Go is the kind of car insurance you can sort in a few minutes online, then bounce on with your day. Are you ready for quick start insurance? Get a quote now at getsetgo.ie. MCL Insurance Services Ireland Limited, trading as getsetgo.ie, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face forward with our new and improved razors.
21 minutes past 9 here this morning on OTB AM. We're going to talk about the retirement of Liam Sheedy as the manager of the Tipperary Hurlers with Paddy Stapleton in a couple of minutes' time. But first, Aisling O'Reilly is with us. Aisling, congratulations. What a call that was a couple of weeks ago. Finally somebody shows up in their jersey.
Yes, do you like it, Jared? Just for you.
Meath won. You called this a couple of weeks back. You said they were going to beat this Cork team. 3 minutes left to go. It did not look like that was going to be the case.
Oh my God, my heart. Oh my God, just unbelievable. You couldn't write that, like 7 points down with 3 minutes to go and two goals in the last minute to bring it to extra time. It's just incredible, and I think it just shows the grit, the determination and the character of the team, because even when they were down that 7 points, you know, I was watching it thinking, oh lads, it's gone. And I was thinking of coming here, speaking to you and thinking, geez, how am I going to face you? And I even watching them, they didn't look like that. You know, I seen Moira in the middle of the field and she was like, you know, encouraging the girls, come on, quick ball through the hand, let's go. There was no giving up, and my God, yeah, they done it.
So just to recap, right, because people might not have seen the piece that we did last week, Meath were beaten by 40 points by essentially a similar Cork team. Some remnants of that team still exist. How long ago was that? 5 years ago?
2015, that game was.
So 6 years ago. And here they are, beating them in an All-Ireland semi-final to go through to play the Dubs. It's an incredible turnaround. Like, it's one of the great turnarounds in Irish sport.
It really is, and it deserves that statement. It really does. Like, it shows what going from intermediate up to senior can do. So I hope that the men's can look at this and see that, you know, they were down in the dumps getting trashed by teams in senior, 40 points to Cork. They go and they regroup and they build, and this is what they come out with. So it's just unbelievable. Just those girls and the effort and the time they put in and the coaching. You have to say, like, watching that game, how they are coached is second to none. The plays they play, like the getting back, everybody gets back, everybody gets forward, and you have to be super, super fit to be on that Meath team. And that in the end, their fitness just pulled through, you know, going into that extra time. They were the better team in the second half, better team coming to the end of the second half. And then in extra time, definitely they were the better team. So, yeah, all credit to them.
Just in case anybody thinks that we're exaggerating here when we're like saying 40 points, it was literally not an exaggerated. It wasn't 20 points.
No.
It was 7-22 to 3 points was the score in an All-Ireland Senior Championship qualifier in 2015. So, Aisling, in terms of what this means for women's football in Meath, put some context on that for us, will you?
Absolutely. Like, that day when that game was played in 2015, there was text messages being sent around the county to get girls to turn up. It was a complete gather up. It wasn't a case that a team had been training away, you know, building towards this game. We were in a bad state of affairs, and then obviously went out, and to get thumped by 40 points, you know, could have been the best thing that ever happened to me, ladies football, because on the back of that, they decided, look, we're going to regrade here. We're going to drop down to intermediate and go at it and, you know, just regroup and have a new fresh look on things. So it's just absolutely massive. Like, my WhatsApp messages, you know, with groups of all the different teams I'm with, they're buzzing. I'm with teams up and down as well, and they're just seeing what they can do. You know, I'm actually with a team in down who just started out, and they've seen what Meath have done, and all of them from yesterday were like, God, it's possible. Like, you know, you can do this. Nothing's impossible if you put the time and effort in. So it's just massive for football, for all of ladies football. You know, I seen some of the Camogie players yesterday as well. Kilkenny, Grace Walsh, she was tweeting, my God, this would really inspire you, what they've done. So yeah, it's unbelievable for just women's games in general.
Now, it's the Dubs in the final, and they're pretty good. But a bit like the men, they're kind of coming back to the pack a bit, are they?
Yeah, absolutely. That's how I would describe them. You know, they are coming back a bit, and they have a few injuries and stuff as well at the moment. So all of those things play a part. We didn't see Carla Rowe at the weekend. She wasn't featuring. Also, Niamh McAvoy, she came on at the end, but she has a bit of a niggle. Sinead McGoldrick is only coming back in. Niamh Collins is out. So there's a few of these things that are, you know, going against them, as well as they haven't been playing the best football this year. They let Mayo come back into it at the weekend. You know, it was 5 points in the end, but, you know, they should have ran out winners there. Mayo, look, no offence, they weren't really at their best this year. So I really thought that Dublin should have put the game to bed early on, and they didn't. So there's a few questions over them that way. But look, they're the reigning champions, and it'll be a tough task for Meath. But I think the good old Dublin-Meath rivalry is what we need. And once they see that blue jersey, I think that'll definitely spur them on.
The irony is probably that Cork and Mayo both started out the year thinking to themselves, right, there's one team to beat here, and they were devising plans all year to beat Dublin. And Meath probably haven't been thinking that way at all. There will be a freedom to those next few weeks, this free hit nature that we've seen so often in the men's game, I guess, over the last couple of years, but definitely pertains to this Meath team over the next little while.
That's it. They're just playing with no fear and nothing to lose. So when they go out every time, you know, it's do our best, girls, like, see how we go. Geez, we're doing unreal to be in this position. They obviously want to win the games, but, like, you know, that's the attitude they're going out with. And they're also underdogs every time. So this all plays a major part. Going into Croke Park as underdogs, you know, loving it. Like, that's exactly what they want. And it's played to them in every game so far. So look, hopefully now, if coming up against the Dubs, that it's that again, they're underdogs, nothing's expected of them. So you just never know with this Meath team. You don't know what they're going to do. They have the team, they have the talent, you know, they have it all in their locker to get over the line against the Dubs. I do believe it. I do think it's going to be absolutely tough task. It's, you know, I was dead sure against Cork, and look, it went right to the wire. But I think with the Dubs, it's going to be an unbelievable final. And as you said, Dublin didn't think that they'd be there. Mayo didn't think that they'd be there. No one did. No one was thinking about them, and they loved it.
They've never been in a senior final before. This is the first time. I think something like 17, 18 counties maybe have been in senior finals. Meath are not one of them, and a county we would associate with such a great footballing tradition. This is the beginning, Aisling, and as much as the team right now will not be seeing it like that, they will be looking at this as a final to be won right now. But if that has happened over the course of 6 years, you can only imagine what the future might hold.
That's it, Eoin. Like, I don't see this team going anywhere. So whatever happens in this All-Ireland senior final, it'll be great if they do it, but it doesn't matter because this team is here to stay. They're so young. Emma Duggan, who scored 1-5, I think she got in the end yesterday, unbelievable at 18 years of age. It's just madness, you know, and she just had no fear, just all the confidence in the world to slot home that goal, to just put them to the extra time, like, just unreal. So as you said, they're here to stay, and it's going to spur on all those young girls here in the county to see that, look, it's possible. Because I'm not going to lie, I grew up never seeing Meath on telly. I never seen them, you know, winning anything. We went to the odd game. There wasn't that real big buzz about them because they weren't really winning. There's a massive buzz now. Everyone's behind them. The football they play all over the country, everyone's behind them because the football they play is just so good to watch. So yeah, it's going to be massive for the county and massive for all the girls playing.
Well, listen, congratulations. Another OTB are celebrating this morning. A good call, a brilliant call, Aisling. Well done. And we'll obviously have plenty of time to preview the All-Ireland final too. So thanks a million for joining us this morning. Cheers.
Absolutely, up the Royals.
That's Aisling O'Reilly there. There's too many Meath people involved in this show. Like there's already too many Meath people involved in this show. What are they going to be like when the men and women start winning?
Well, I mean, this is something that you'll have to educate me on what it was like in, I don't know, 2001.
How close are the men's team to being properly competitive? Like, do we now have to go back and recalibrate all of the Leinster performances this year? Are Wexford looking at that performance going, Jesus?
I think everyone is. I think if Meath and Kildare aren't feeling some level of regret after Saturday, then something is desperately wrong in both of those counties, because they need to see that as the next step. The Leinster Championship, you would like to think is on over the next little while. I think next year may be a little bit too soon, but we should see proper heart-stopping games. And like, there's been nothing better in Irish sport over the last couple of years than seeing that Dublin team push to the pin of their collar, and it would be amazing to start seeing that earlier in the season and more frequently. So yeah, maybe this is where Meath come in and give us a few early summer classics between themselves and Dublin and spark a rivalry that's been dormant for way too long. All right,
it's bang on 9:30 this morning. It's time for us to turn our attention to the other big breaking GAA news story this morning, and that is that Tipperary will be looking for a new football manager. A new hurling manager, rather, after Liam Sheedy announced that he was stepping aside after his 3-year term. Delighted to say Paddy Stapleton is with us this morning to talk about Liam Sheedy's legacy. A two-time All-Ireland winning manager in different eras, and obviously a player of great renown as well. When it comes to write the history of Tipperary GAA, Paddy, Liam Sheedy's name is going to be right up there in the pantheon of the all-time greats.
Yeah, that's correct, Jerry. Yeah, he'll be right up there at the top. And I think for me, looking back at it, the way he pulled the team, like in 2008, Tipperary were after losing to Wexford in a quarter-final of the All-Ireland in 2007. Brendan Cummins was after being left out of the team. Owen Kelly was after being left out of the team. And it was really in disarray. I remember being at the match because Wexford weren't a big team at the time. And I suppose Tipper in free fall. He came in 2008. I was lucky enough to be brought in the same year. When 5 new guys in the panel was all there was. And he took more or less the same group of players and reached the All-Ireland semi-final. Narrowly lost out to Waterford. And won the county's first Munster final since 2001. And I suppose that was the beginning of Tipperary being properly competitive again, in which they probably hadn't been since Nick English in 2002.
I think as well the fact that, you know, we know how the Offaly stopping the 5 in a row has gone down in GAA lore as time goes on and on and on, and you know, maybe Limerick do 5 in a row hurling, we'll see, and that becomes less of a story. But stopping the then greatest hurling team of all time from doing 5 in a row was an absolutely sensational thing that, like, when you come back and you back it up again with another All-Ireland, with another entirely different team as well, it just again further suggests that here is somebody who knows how hurling works so fundamentally that he's able to adapt to different eras.
I think that's a huge thing. That's absolutely massive. I suppose the only thing he had is coming in with Tipperary in 2008. He was quite a young manager, but such a huge figurehead. Kilkenny at the time had it over everybody, really, and they were still in their peak in 09 and 10, and we were quite a young team. So I think he needed a hugely strong leader. I know Eamon O'Shea gets huge credit, and deservedly so, in the way the team played, but lots of people would say to me, was he the brains behind it, Eamon O'Shea? Like, to me, without Liam Sheedy, that doesn't happen. To instill that mental strength in a team, that kind of attitude that we wouldn't be beaten or that we could reach the top, that was unbelievable from him, and no other team was able to do it at the time with Kilkenny. They were bullying everyone, which they should have been, off the field, and he was the first man that came in and got the Tipperary crowd behind us, and such a brilliant win. And it was a fever all over Tip and Kilkenny that time. It was absolute fever pitch stuff. The crowds at the Kilkenny trainings, we didn't get too many at ours, but we knew we could stop him. But I think you're 100% correct. To come back 7 or 8 years later and deliver an All-Ireland in the first year, and even people might not remember, they have a short memory, the first team that was named in 2019 against Cork in the group stages of Munster had a lot of the older players playing, or a lot of the tried and tested, and there was a lot of question marks from the Tipperary supporters, and he answered them, and he just played who he felt. Now, I suppose over the last 2 years, maybe people say he played him too much, but he stuck with what he taught all the time. And look, All-Ireland championships are hard to come by, and to win one more than after 16 with that group of players, I think it was fitting for them, and it was fitting for him.
There was this video that did rounds earlier in the year, Paddy, of the way Liam Sheedy communicates with his players. He screamed in the face of one fella, put his arm around the shoulder of another fella. He completely knew, it seemed from the outside looking in, that the way that each of his players' brains worked. Was that your experience playing under him?
Yeah, I would think so. I would have been, in my younger days anyway, maybe not now, would have been a relatively quieter player, and maybe hadn't huge confidence in myself. I went into the panel as a 22-year-old, so that's late, and I think you can have doubts over yourself if you haven't been called in before that age. And certainly himself and the backroom team put as much confidence in me as they could. And I know they were trying to breed leaders, because I know they would often try and get you to talk to the group, be more vocal within the group. I think he knew what every player needed. I suppose if you look at Seamie Callanan as well, tried to put a lot of confidence into him as a young player, knowing what skill he had. But that's just the way they were. And even if I look back at Eoin Kelly was like a second manager on the team. And I think him and Liam were quite close. You'll see that they're both part of the management team for the last few years. And he was like a second manager on the team. And opposed to what maybe was going on before that, where the players were at odds with managers. And I think Liam is great to get a group of players going into a one direction together. And I know even after they lost the Munster final in 19, I would have talked to some of the players, and they said they were flabbergasted when they got beaten in the Munster final so badly, because they said the team spirit was never as good. And I think he really, really brought that to teams. And I can remember a lot of stages, maybe you'd be travelling to games in the league, and you might say, well, I remember playing in Limerick in a league game, and I was in college in Limerick, and I was saying maybe I drive to the game to be able to stay there for college afterwards. And he said, no, would you mind driving? I want to keep everybody together. And it was just those little things that created the team spirit, and I suppose that was probably his specialty.
Could I just ask, Paddy, how did he instill that confidence in you? Was there anything that he did in particular that allowed you to grow in that way?
Well, personally, I think speaking to you on your own level, individually, he would often do that. And I think he knew the lads to talk to a lot. He wouldn't talk to me a lot, and I think that was good for my own preparation. But one-on-one meetings happened, and they happened once or twice a year. And it was really something where you felt that you could say out your side of things. Like, if I wasn't playing, I know I wasn't playing well in my first year, and there was one-to-one meetings, and I suppose I wasn't that confident to go and pull management during the year, off my own back. So when they were scheduled, I was able to get things off my chest, and that's what really started the ball rolling for me. I also think, I was talking to somebody the other day, there'd be a lot of video work and analysis and showing you where you went really well, and maybe especially before the match. I think most teams do it now. But really trying to drive players' confidence up by showing the good aspects how we play. And I think that's important. Like, we grew up for years, and anything that was shouted in from the sideline is highlighting their bad points. And Jesus, why did you do this? Why did you do that? Very little of that from Liam Sheedy. He was always trying to get as much positivity on the field as possible. And I think you'd even notice that in the sideline. You'd never see him berate his players, because he knew, he trained them, and he was always trying to get him to the best level that he could.
I remember we did a thing in Setanta with him, and the end of the interview was always like, "Oh, give us a book you'd recommend." And his recommendation was Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People. I was like, wow, this is not what I expected from a GA manager. This is 10 years ago, it was before the Pat Gilroy and what came after in Dublin with Jim Gavin. And that was like a book written in 1936 that obviously, like he was somebody who brought the world of outside and his successful career in banking to bear on the organisational side of things and on the fundraising side of things, and brought Tipperary to the point where they could go toe to toe with whatever was happening. That was like a massive injection of professionalisation off the field as well in that first era. And the other thing that I just wanted to bring up here, Paddy, was that there was definitely a sense of unfinished business, that he left probably because his career was taken off, that he felt like he had to step away to make sure that that part of his life was being secured. But I know that within your setup that there was definitely some players who felt like there was unfinished business and that he'd stepped away just one year too early or 2 years too early the first time round.
Yeah, I mean, there was extreme disappointment. I know that much. I can actually still remember being in the library in UL, getting that text through, and like I wouldn't have the best memory. So it kind of was one of those moments where were you when you heard about it? I think Lark Horwood spoke about it, that he felt kind of, very, very down after. But I suppose you just knew, and I suppose the most experienced players knew how hard it was to get a good manager, a really good manager, a top manager, and that they don't actually come around all that often. And we knew what we had with Liam. But I think if you look at inter-county management, it's all encompassing. Like, you have your 9-to-5 job anyway, but I'm sure that's even taken over with this. You're managing 30 players, but that's only the start of it. The county board, the supporters club, the management team that you're dealing with every day, the analysis crew, the physios. Like, you can imagine the hours and hours that go into this. And let's be honest, this is this is these people's passion in life. Okay, we all love work, and some people are lucky enough to have it as their passion, but for hurling people is their passion, and football the same. So I would say this has taken up so many hours, and I can't blame him for walking away the first time or this time now, because even this time I think it's obvious that Tip probably needs somebody to not steady the ship, but maybe pursue different avenues of players and styles of play over the next 2 or 3 years. So, him to stay on for 1 year probably wasn't an option. And I think to say he might stay on for 2 or 3 more years, that would mean a 6-year tenure. I think that's just too much to ask.
Is Liam Cahill the obvious successor?
I think he's the obvious one. I certainly do think he's the obvious one, and a couple of reasons. Number one, obviously, he's gone to Waterford straight away, and he's got a hop. He's got that bounce off the players. He's got real buy-in from the players, the supporters, and the county board, and that's very, very attractive. Like, that is shown on paper. I can do it at inter-county level. I suppose the second little part of that is a lot of the players that Tipperary, the Jake Morrises, the Mark Keoghs, Paddy Cadells, all these young players in Tip, they've worked under Liam Cahill. And if you talk to people that have played under him, you'd say the large majority of them would absolutely do anything for him. Like that, they go through a brick wall for him. And that's what I've heard multiple times over the last while. Now, I don't know, is the timing right for all included? I have heard a couple of other names, maybe even Darry Egan. I'd know him very well from playing with him all the way underage. And he's a selector at the minute with Tipperary, very forward-thinking person. So he is somebody else I think is in the mix at the minute as well. So you just don't know. I think if Liam Cahill, is offered the job, as much as say he's getting a lot out of Waterford, which he is, and they'd be disgusted to lose him, it would be very hard to turn down, I think, myself. And the only reason is if you want to wait in this business, you just don't know what will happen next year or the year after. It mightn't be available for 5 or 6 years after this, and by that time the players he trained at under 20 and under 21 level would be well moulded in the inter-county circuit. So Liam Cahill is probably the obvious choice, but you know yourself in this game, anything could happen.
Yeah, look, if the system is working properly, you get your experience with the county at inter-county level, at underage level, and it's even better if you can go off and get some senior inter-county experience, and it just so happens his 2-year term is up there. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Are there any other viable contenders at this stage?
The only one I'm hearing is Darragh Egan,
right,
who's involved at the minute with Tipperary. What I'd say is Tipperary probably need just a little alteration in the way they're going about things. I think Tipperary look like they're playing the same hurling that they did maybe in 16, and maybe if you go back into 14, I was still playing at that stage, where we play a lot of sort of angled balls from long distances into our forward line, into Sheahan Callanan, which is fine. But I think the windows of getting that, what we've talked about before, the windows to hit the ball into your full forward line are getting so small now that I think the ball needs to be worked up a little bit more up the field, and then you can hit a fast ball into a full forward. I suppose if you looked at Liam Cahill, he plays a lot of that hurling. He plays that style. Mikey Beavens is the coach, and they run that ball very, very hard. And they did when they were over tip minors and under 20s as well. So that looks like the game plan. That's the modern age. I would, I'd be as happy as anyone to see Liam Cahill take it. But alternatively, if it was the likes of Darragh Egan, I think they'd be very well set too, because he has a huge hurling brain. But apart from that, I can't see anybody else that would be in line. Baron O'Kelly, who's involved at the minute as well. For a bit of continuity, I can't see anybody else. And I'd rack my brain, so I'd say it'd be any of the pick of one of those.
Okay, one last question for you. Brendan Maher, a clubmate of yours, retired after one of the great GAA careers, and again, sometimes we can overblow these things, but basically won absolutely everything there was for the game on offer, and was always incredibly classy on and off the field as well.
Yeah, look at he's. I was lucky enough to play beside him since he's very, very young age with my club, and I'll continue to, thank God. But he's had an unbelievable career. I think even if you looked at 2010, Lark Arbor was hurler of the year officially, but Brendan Maher was probably the unofficial hurler of the year that year, and he was 21 years of age. And that group of players were carrying the team against, we always talk about one of the best teams of all time, Kilkenny. And from such a young age, I can't imagine to be trying to do that at 21 years of age. And he was certainly to the forefront of that. And I can even remember in the dressing room as being he was a very vocal leader at that stage. And in 2011, he was unfortunate, he broke his ankle. But I remember before that, looking at we were playing a few league games and just thinking he's by far the best player in the country at the moment. And I think the brilliant thing about him, obviously he'll have gone over it on the show before, is he was so flexible in what he could do. I've seen him play as a forward, a really prolific forward for our club, but I've seen him man mark, seen him playing the full back line, I've seen him playing in goals. So I don't think if you give him enough time at anything on a hurling field, I think he would have mastered. And that's the way he is mentally, but he also has it obviously skillful wise. So he's had an unbelievable career, and we're very proud, and especially I think one of his best moments in 2016 to captain an All-Ireland winning team, and I suppose bringing it back to Borrisley is something he won't forget, and I certainly won't forget it either.
No, he totally deserved it as well. Paddy, good stuff. Thanks a million for the immediate reaction this morning. Cheers.
No bother, Jerry. Thank you.
Paddy Stapleton, as I said, giving us some immediate reaction to the news that as it stands, Tipperary are looking for a new hurling manager. Liam Sheedy has stepped down after another successful term, won All-Ireland this time, won All-Ireland the last time, and really re-established Tipperary at the top tier of hurling. You forget about the chaos that had preceded it. Owen Kelly being dropped, Brendan Cummins being dropped. Fairly remarkable stuff when you think back to it. OTB AM is brought to you by Gillette. Good morning. Start with Gillette. Put your best face forward with their new and improved razors. And congratulations to Brian Healy, who has won our Gillette starter pack this morning. Brian got in touch on Instagram to say that Lee Keegan deserved to be in the green. No explanation needed. Indeed, you could have put Lee Keegan in the green. What a late career flourish it has been this season from him. Right, join us tomorrow morning from 7:30. We'll bring you another update to the official Gaelic football power rankings. There'll be more fallout from Dublin-Mayo and much more as well. Right now, we're bringing you some more reaction to Dublin-Mayo from Sunday's OTB. Enjoy.
Very happy to say we have Billy Joe Padden with us and Paul Pillar Caffrey as well. So ends, Pillar, the longest running championship winning run in history. 45 matches in total, 6 straight All-Irelands. We will have new All-Ireland winners for the first time since 2014. You take this game as the first 35 minutes and the subsequent 55 minutes. The first 35, it looked ominous. If anything, it was an anticlimax.
Yeah, look, bonkers is how I was describing it afterwards. It was, Mayo's first half was shockingly poor. I couldn't understand that they didn't take what we expected would happen, that they would take the game to Dublin and push up and go man to man. They went back into their shell and played zonal defence and had men covering back, and Dublin were doing what they have been doing, just picking them off. And 10-4, it wasn't a harsh reflection on the first half. If anything, Dublin maybe could have been further in front, and I don't think anybody in the stadium could anticipate what was going to unfold going forward. The one thing you would say is, look, when you read the programme and you're watching this Dublin team evolving this year, you just felt, if our bench is going to have to come in and finish a really big game and there's going to be clutch moments, I had worries. I just felt that, as each sub was coming on, the subs energised and took Dublin over the line so much in that winning run that was assembled. Game after game, big moments were changed by substitutions coming in and delivering. And looking at the lack of experience and maybe the lack of depth in real quality on Dublin's bench, I just felt that, look, if this goes down to the wire, and as happened, like Johnny Cooper and Owen Murchan and these guys happen to come off, it really hurt Dublin's level of performance. And that doesn't take anything away from Mayo. There was obviously something clicked in them, and it was a brave decision by James Horan to take off Aidan O'Shea, and they actually went on and played much better with Aidan on the sideline. Some of the football they played and some of the long-range points that they kicked were absolutely phenomenal. But look, all good teams, the cycle comes to an end, and I wouldn't be as optimistic as Desi obviously looking in. I think this is one of those moments in a sporting lifetime of a cycle of a team. For me, that Dublin have given so much pleasure to Dublin supporters. The ride that the capital has been on for maybe the last 10 years has been phenomenal, and I think there'll be a lot of changes. I think a lot of senior fellas will have a serious think about the commitment levels that they've given, and I think you'll have 4 or 5 from that listed group yesterday stepping away, and I think there could even be 1 or 2 other guys who will say, you know what, I need a break from my own personal life.
Yeah, no doubt it's full-on commitment for them. James Horan, Billy Joe said, we were probably tentative in the first 15-20 minutes whether we should push forward or hold a little bit. We got caught in that maybe. And he says even with that we had 3 or 4 very bad wides, and they did. I mean, the signs were so ominous for Mayo early on. Aidan O'Shea with the wide from play, and then there was the free which was pushed wide by Ryan O'Donoghue, and then like when O'Shea's mark hits the post from about 50 metres, that's where you think to yourself, really, anytime Mayo are going to beat Dublin, they need everything to go their way, and these were very ominous signs. It really was extraordinary what happened in that second half and beyond. And as Pillar says, of the Dublin bench contributed a single point. Contrast that with the All-Ireland final December, where Mannion and Howard come off the bench and really settled the game. This was a very different Dublin we saw yesterday.
Yeah, well, I think the quality of player they had to come off the bench in the All-Ireland final last year, with Mannion and Howard, the abilities they have. But I think from Mayo's point of view, they got a whole lot of things wrong in the first half. I never like Aidan O'Shea playing on the full forward line. I don't think he's a good full forward. I think that obviously it didn't go well for him, and that affected his ability to contribute even for the 6 or 7 minutes in the second half he played out the field, and it was going to be very hard for him to recover his confidence to be effective. I think they tried to put pressure on Evan Comfort in the first half, but just weren't able to do it, and Comfort looked really comfortable. He hit some great kickouts over the Mayo press out to areas under the Hogan stand and put Dublin on quick counterattacks, and Dublin were precise in their play. They seemed to be creating scoring chances at will, and it was really a struggle for Mayo. If anything, when you look back at the positives for Mayo in that first half, was the fact that the full backline was able to hang in there well enough not to concede a goal. And I really think that long range free from Robbie Hindley and the point from Conor Loftus late in the first half were absolutely critical in just keeping Mayo in the game and giving them some confidence, something to draw on at half time. But really totally unplanned first half, when you consider that they would have wanted to put Dublin under severe pressure. They had to make a tactical substitution to take off McHale and bring on Hessian in the first half. They wouldn't have wanted to do that. But again, I think that James Horan obviously got the right message across at half time. There was obviously a lot more in them in terms of the energy levels they could bring and the intensity, and you saw that in the second half. And even though it took a long time for it to play out, I think it was nearly as surprising in the early stages of the second half at how passive Dublin war, and maybe they were thinking that the only way Mayo could get back into the game was through goals, and they could seem to drop so deep. The whole of the Dublin team were like inside their own 65, and I think the key moment, the turning point for me in the game, wasn't so much Aidan O'Shea coming off. It happened before that. Was Lee Keegan, I thought, was just monumental, and those early stages in the second half. Dublin were so deep that Con O'Callaghan was out around the middle of the field, and Lee Keegan just followed him out there. The first long-range free that Robbie Hindley got in the second half was for a third-man tackle, a pull by Con O'Callaghan on Lee Keegan, and then the next passage of play was completely bizarre, where Dublin have the ball in the right corner forward position. Scully hits an outside of the outside the boot ball into the centre half forward position to a 3-on-1 situation against Dublin, which you never ever see Dublin do, and it goes down the other end. And who's there to finish it off? Lee Keegan, and that just kind of created a bit of momentum for Mayo. But even for long periods that second half, they didn't play well. There was wides from Carr, there was wides from McLaughlin. Not a whole lot of quality in the Mayo performance, but a whole load of grit.
Yeah, I mean, Dublin's conversion rate in the second half and extra time dropped to 28%. Like, Pillar, I don't know the last time Dublin had a 28% conversion rate, but it's not for a very, very long time. Like, that was just extraordinary. And like Billy Joe mentions that memorable moment of Scully, like, geez, I mean, there's playing keep ball and there's playing keep ball, like that moment of madness. And that's not to mention the gift of the 45 for Mayo as Dublin tried to play keep ball again. It was almost like they were playing off memory a little bit, or like doing what, like this sort of works for us in the past, we'll stick to it. Like something with Dublin just went badly wrong.
Yeah, and it wasn't so much, that last 60 minutes will be remembered as what Dublin were about. I think Dublin were in a pale shadow of themselves all year. I'm not saying this was being predicted in terms of this performance, because I agree with Billy. Like, Mayo didn't come and play a masterclass game, and we didn't see a classic game of football yesterday by any shape. I thought Mayo for long periods were still very ordinary. I didn't think that up front that they actually kicked on, but that's not the Dublin that we've come to know and recognise over the last number of years. That this year's the performance levels had dropped significantly, worryingly so. And you just knew in terms of the personnel that Desi was given game time to the next generation, you might say, of players coming through. In Dublin here, we would feel that, the leakage that they've had in terms of squad members over the last 2 seasons has been immense. And even, like the Paul Mannion situation, the Stephen Cluxon situation, like they were left unresolved in a lot of supporters' minds and heads. And, I know Desi throws out the line that every player has to make their own decision, but it doesn't sit well when you hear that Paul Mannion scored 2-4 in a league game for Kilmacud Crokes last week. He played a challenge game against my own club a couple of weeks ago and scored 10 points. You think, like, hang on, if a guy is taking a break from football and has gone travelling, you totally understand that. But for a guy to step back from Dublin and still be contributing to them high standards with Kilmacud Crokes here a week before an All-Ireland semi-final, you're saying, I would have preferred Dublin to go out with everybody there with their boots on, their shields held high, and thinking, that's the Dublin that we came to love and know over the last 10 years. Of course, change is necessary and change happens, but the Cluxon situation for a lot of people was left unresolved in our eyes. And maybe in them clutch moments, Evan Comfort is obviously a fantastic keeper and will be there for a long time. But in them clutch moments, that last 45 that was conceded to give Rob Hennelly the double chance to bring the game to extra time, like, would that have happened if Cluxon was in goal? You would have just liked to see it finish on a different way from the Dublin perspective. And maybe that's us being greedy here and saying it wasn't a case that this winning run could keep going on forever and ever. But I just think that it'll be a very, very desperately disappointed dressing room. Not that they didn't do their best. That was going to happen. I actually felt it would happen in the All-Ireland this year. I didn't think it would happen on Saturday.
Do you think standards are slipping behind the scenes?
I would have no doubt that you don't lose them, the guys that they've lost. Even like Kevin McMenamin, taking his life choice this year and saying, his job is in the back room with the Irish boxing team, but he was a huge loss to that dressing room. He adds an awful lot more than just minutes on the field, and the quality that he brought to the Dublin team. He would have huge leadership Michael Darren McCauley stepped away. He was sitting in front of me in the Cusick yesterday. Another guy that brought immense, energy to that dressing room. And when dressing rooms change like that and the slippage starts happening, standards no doubt did drop in some shape or form. And the other thing, look, and it's the same for every county, but like you talk to club players or you talk to county players, there hasn't been as much fun and enjoyment for any of them playing through this COVID for the last 2 seasons. Like even Dublin last year, winning the All-Ireland, every year previously you win the All-Ireland, you go on a team holiday, and that becomes a bonding exercise for the following season. None of that would have taken place. So I think even watching Dublin, the joy of watching Dublin wasn't there this year. Like they weren't an enjoyable watch.
Like this.
Desi, what has the last year been like for you yourself? It's been a tough year with the COVID training ban, Stephen Cluxon departing, Eric Lowndes leaving. Like 80 All-Ireland medals have left that Dublin dressing room in the last 18 months. Have you found it tough over the last year?
No, I haven't. At the end of the day, our job as management is simple enough. It's just to facilitate and try to create the environment where our players can be at their best, and individual players make decisions to move on, and that's part of it. That's the nature of sport, and time or tide waits for no man. And if a number of players decide that they need to move on, everyone respects that, and all of them, including the players in the dressing room today, have given massive service to the county over the last number of years, and we 100% respect that. And elite sport is all about regeneration and continuously evolving, and that's what this Dublin team needs to do.
For the likes of Brian Fenton.
And they're going to need a big squad if they're going to tackle Europe and the Premier League and whatever cup competitions they're in as well, because they're going to be playing matches on a Thursday and a Sunday, and as we've seen before, that can be so hard for teams that are not used to European action.
Yeah, listen, I agree. Like I said, I think we seen them with Burnley when they made Europe. They faltered in the Premier League, only just avoided relegation, and I think West Ham will be fearful of something like that. But I think David Moyes is long in the tooth. He's a very good manager, and I think the difference between Newcastle and West Ham, both not bringing players in, is that West Ham finished 6th in the league, not 6th, just 2 points off of the Champions League position. So David Moyes can spin the narrative that this is all I need. I have what I need here. Use are the lads that are going to bring this club forward. He can use that narrative because he wasn't chasing in the transfer market. They weren't linked with everybody. They've quietly just been happy, so he can spin it to the players like that. He can probably get the dressing room to think about it in a different way, whereas Newcastle just flirting with relegation, just staying up, only spending 25 million on Willock, I think, and the fans are quite vocal that they're not happy, which will spill onto the pitch. It does, although players say it doesn't, it really does spill onto the pitch. So the fields around the clubs are very, very different, and I think West Ham, I wouldn't like to see Mikel Antonio get injured. There's 2 or 3 in there I wouldn't like to see get injured from a West Ham point of view, but I think on the whole, I think Moyes will probably spin it a better way.
OTB AM.
With Gillette, put your best face